a chat with you, and somehow death loses its sting.
Once it was reluctantly aroused. It was hard to get it aroused, and it is hard to get it aroused, but we got it aroused. You have nobody guarding your potatoes.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, it's a dickper.
What's a dickper?
To pee with.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
All right. Who wants some? Who's next?
How, in the name of Zeus's butthole, did you get out of your cell?
We're honored to have with us today our amazing Vice President, Mike Pence, and his wonderful wife, Carrot.
Man's got to know his limitations.
I gotta barbecue your ass in molasses!
We need you. Hell, I need you. I'm a mess without you. I miss you so damn much. I miss being with you. I miss being near you. I miss your laugh. I miss your scent. I miss your musk. When this all gets sorted out, I think you and me should get an apartment together.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. Butthole! And I'm all out of bubblegum. Butthole!
Moon River. He thinks I made it up.
Unbelievable.
Hi, everybody. How are you? Good to see you. Welcome. What's going on? How's your life? How's your Monday? It's a Monday. I will give you that. I mean, we don't expect much from the Mondays, but especially these days, you know, with Friday news dumps being what they are, it's hard to even get a grasp on what a day of the week means anymore. Hi, Carl. Hey, Natalie. Hey, Rebecca. Hey, Waslanik. I can't even pronounce it. I'll try very hard. Selenonik something. Hi. It's not your fun day. It is manic though. I will give that. Patreons assemble. Thank you, Richard Custer. Good to see you. Hello. Oh yes, it was quite a weekend. Those of you that got to come to the first Sexy Liberal virtual tour, very exciting. A lot of work went into it. I went a little crazy, a little overboard, as you saw. Some of you have seen pieces. I'm going to up the ante even more in the next one. I have started working on what will be, because I want it to be as topical as possible, but I also want to do things that require a certain level of production. So what I'm doing is I'm building the infrastructure video-wise, like and the music for what I'm gonna create, and then when the situation, God knows, something ridiculous and hideous and absurd and frightening and stupid will happen within days of the next show, I can write lyrics and bits off of that, knowing full well that I'm going to use this as the main structure. In theory, that's how it's going to work. And then, you know, when that week comes, I'll be up for 3 days straight because I came up with a whole new idea. It happens. It's how I live. So enjoy. Yes, there can be way more. Thank you, Amy K. I'm glad you liked the Groper Brothers Donald Trump Gospel Hour. I was very proud of that. It had literally been stuck in my head for days. So the first line of that, well, we went down to the River Jordan, like that, like, yeah, ridiculous. So as I tried to work on, you know, what my bits would be, I kept coming back to that would be the way to go. And then I was like, okay, screw it, let's do it like that. And I started working on it like crazy for days. So look at that. We've only been on for a scant couple of minutes, and we've already, I've gotten an award from Restream for having 100 messages already. You guys are amazing. Feel you learning LumaFusion and some other apps so I can make a cool, simple intro. Yeah, that's the trick, is building that infrastructure for it. Gospel Hour 2 Minute Church. It's not the kind of church most people go to. Hey, Philly Dana. So anyways, more along those lines to come. We already wrote part, I think, in the chat room after. I have to record. Well, I got that glory. I got that glory. I got that glory hole in my soul for Lindsey Graham. We'll figure it out. Anyways, wanna get that glory, 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 glory. Got that glory hole in my soul. That's gonna, yeah, it's gonna, oh boy. So more of that. Now that I'm inspired and I have the groundwork, and I want to bring back the baritone guy with the mustache so badly. The guy who looked like he was in pain while he was singing the entire time. It became my favorite person while I was making it, and the characters that I play, because this is the tenor guy or the slash alto, whatever, and the kind of the two main baritones in the bass, and the baritones split the high and mild notes, and like the mid notes, and I was literally rehearsing, like working on the writing of it, looking at these kind of watching old videos of these groups, and always one guy in the band always looks like he's in pain, so I was like, okay, that's the guy. Billy Bob's Bean Emporium coming at you live. Exactly. Well, that was, that kind of mixed together from all of us being in lockdown and us having not done a show in lockdown, and all kind of like living in close quarters with, eating a lot of beans, a lot of vegetarians and vegans out there trying to get their protein needs met and doing all their shoppings in big chunks. So anyways, enough of the behind the music. Yeah, well, let's it was a good time. It really was. So let's get on. By the way, Trump held a round table with law enforcement today. And of course, by round table, we mean large rectangular tables attached together in an even bigger rectangle with a hole in the center. And there, if you weren't able to get in the lobby, Karen, you didn't miss a lot because you got rolled around. Yes, very Oak Ridge boys. Yes. But anyways, on the next episode, we may be changing up how both the meet and grope and the other thing go next time, so they're a little more personal. I would like that, so I'm working on that. I'll let you guys know. We'll see. There's a familiar funny bit in Pitch Perfect with the old timers doing a cappella. Okay, great. I'll take a look at that and see if it's favorite line of the night. Oh, that one came out of my ass. Yeah, I got up and I knocked the stool over when I was trying to walk past the green screen, and I was like, all right. Yeah, and then I threw the sound effects in later. Stupid, like it just felt like something falling over. Anyways, so Trump decided to have a round table with law enforcement. Now, for the record, before we even get started, I am not, nor are you going to find me on the bandwagon of anything remotely being anywhere near, quote, defund the police or abolishing police departments for a couple of reasons. One, the main one, we didn't used to have police departments at all. And we didn't have significant numbers of police policing the country just by volume as the population grew. And because of that, violent crime spiked. And lots of people died and were raped and were assaulted because of that very fact. And the rise in available police has tracked with, largely, the lowering of violent crime, among other factors as well, as you raise socioeconomic factors, as okay. So you're not going to find me in that. And the whole Camden, New Jersey thing obviously pricked my ears up, as you were. Camden, New Jersey, they were like, they abolished their, they defunded and abolished their police department, and it worked out great. No, they switched to a county-based system, and they ended up having more police ultimately, and it was just county police doing the exact same thing, and they doubled the volume of it. They just took tax dollars from another section of the state, the outlying area, and poured it into Camden. So lead paint is absolutely a factor. We'll talk about that as a major factor, Edward. I've got some graphs today. Oh boy, do I have some graphs. So understand that the maniacal idea that you would get rid of police in general because a group of human beings has systematically and strategically inserted themselves into the police departments all across the country. The ones that were bumped out of the military for being white supremacists after they joined after 9/11 to start their own little race war. And then when they were broomed out by the Bush administration, they all, because they got this, like, we don't make a big story out of this. So they broomed them out to, and said, okay, you get a discharge, just a regular discharge. You're not honorable, it's not dishonorable, just beat it. Because we don't want to draw too much attention to it. And a lot of those people use that fact that they were in the military as their base point for getting hired in local law enforcement across the country and carrying out the exact same strategy. Over-militarization of the police is a big problem. Defunding and isolating what it means to be SWAT and when that's called in and when it isn't will be a huge factor in this. And local patrols, there's a bunch of stuff like that. That donut shop that like rescinded their cop free donut or discount, whatever they gave. I'm like I get where they're going, but are the black and Asian cops now don't get the discount? Why? So you want to give Chauvin and those like him that much power? You don't think the white supremacists in this country don't want fewer cops and fewer murder investigations in areas where they would love to carry out murders? Forget it. So I just think it's ridiculous. And I know defund the slave patrols aspect of the police department. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. That sounds just like linguistics to me as opposed to reality. I don't mean to be facetious or doubt your good intentions, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But this is Trump basically hiding behind the fact that the majority of cops are good. This is a win being handed to Trump by like hyper lefties and some elements of the protest movement that have other agendas and other stuff going on and are basically delivering this. The Russians are boosting the defund thing like crazy right now. So I just, we used to not have police. We used to have one sheriff assigned to an area, and then they would round up a bunch of locals whenever they thought they had a ne'er-do-well or a criminal, and they would find that person and hang them. We used to have hangings twice a week in this country when we didn't have police, when we didn't have a functioning legal system. Thank you, Natalie, and thank you, Brian. Thank you guys so much. So, do there need to be reforms? Absolutely. Are all the police organizations in the country in need of reform? This is like the Starbucks thing where all the people in the Starbucks in my building in LA where I lived, when the two guys were arrested for loitering in the Starbucks, and then started that whole kerfuffle, and Starbucks had everybody go through racial sensitivity training. All the people in the Starbucks that work in the building all had to go through racial sensitivity training. They were all black and Hispanic. All of them. It was ridiculous. So the issue that I have with the whole like defund or abolish nonsense is that it's a pipe dream that doesn't affect the reality of it. And you guys know that I feel like revolution is the 6-minute abs of democracy, that real change that's lasting takes time and focus and energy and caring and listening and working, and and you move too far forward, you have to take 2 steps back. So that's why you pace the growth and the change that you want to see. So let's just clear that up beforehand. So nobody rolls in here troll-wise and thinks they can drop that garbage in here and walk out. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. So thank you so much, Dave. I'm glad the audio is working today. That's it's always a touchy part. I didn't even ask because I didn't hear people going, I don't know what the. All right. So let's be abundantly clear about that. Let's also understand that, since the 90s, a lot of cities have implemented community policing and have tried to make efforts in this area, and the hiring of people like corrections officers are some of the highest paid officers in the state of California, for example. If you look at your whatever state you're in, look at the job sites for state jobs, and you have to go through the police academy, but to get to be a police officer or have had military training that you can drop over into that, or they accept you into smaller police forces. But in terms of being a correctional officer, you don't have to, because you're not having to quote laws to people. They're already in there. You're basically a janitor for the dregs of humanity. And in the case of California, and it's like this for a lot of states, what we pay correctional officers is incredibly high because the turnover rate is horrid, and it's incredibly dangerous work. Because some of the rotating people that come in and out of there go after your family, they kill people they do all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So a lot of people just do it for a while and split. So I would like you to incorporate all of that thought into your head when you are hearing these things that we're going to talk about. And then the other thing is, because the vast majority of cops are decent, hardworking people who run towards danger, and that is an absolute fact, and that the minority that get news taint the rest of the group. Trump is this has softballed him an issue that he can hide behind. So he is hiding behind the good people of law enforcement, by the way, while encouraging, hear me now, encouraging the bad cops. That's the problem. The reality is, vast majority of cops are good. That's an undeniable fact. But Trump is not only hiding behind them to try and score points as a law and order president, he's also been in the habit of, and literally at campaign speeches, you guys have seen it, encourage the mistreatment of suspects and people who are arrested and the like. He has encouraged the kind of behavior that is the worst of the worst that we have seen. They're for it. You know what I mean? His followers, him, that's the push. So there you go. Yeah, the don't be too nice thing. Don't push their head down when you go in and stuff. People in this country are innocent until they're proven guilty. And it is not the officer's job to determine guilt or innocence. They are an official witness, and they are there to arrest and detain people who are in the process of committing crimes. If it turns out they weren't guilty later on, they will either, through their lawyer or a public defender that's supplied to them, show their innocence, and it is the burden of the state to prove that they are guilty. That's what makes our legal system unique and important. And you know why as they said in Hot Fuzz, why the cops aren't judge, jury, and executioner. So there you go. Let's be real clear about that. Nobody rolls in here and goes, you liberals are blah, blah, blah. No. Largely the defund hashtags and that kind of stuff are being bounced by Russians. There are definitely some true believers, but it's a ridiculous issue. And the other reason is, by the way, the second reason that I find most concerning is that when you talk about defunding police in a certain area, those movements to do that will only be in parts of the country that have the highest crime rates and need community policing the most, need better policing. And they're not going to get it. If you just simply abolish and defund, which like I said, the Camden case does not apply. It was they just moved to county policing. They took more state budget money from that and they added cops. They didn't take them away. It didn't lower the amount. But it's super important. They have to understand rich areas are not going to lose a single cop in this defund movement. You understand? It's only poor areas that will lose them, if they even had them in the first place. So just put that in your mind while we're talking about this. And thank you, Rebecca. Thank you so much. I know this is a weird, kind of touchy subject, but this is what's happening around us. And it's very important to discuss this like adults. I mean, I've heard debates online that sound like two people at Comic-Con arguing what butterfly farts smell like. It is the dumbest, backwards, ridiculous argument it's like libertarians arguing for, citizen sovereignty. It's the same goofy nonsense. So there we go. So let's jump to Trump hiding behind the good and decent law enforcement people, while we all know that he spent the last 4 or 5 years, and if you go all the way back to his one page that he took out on the Central Park 5, decades of encouraging the worst kind of cops and then hiding behind the good ones. So here we go.
Disbanding of our police.
Which is what he jumps into. Like I said, this is a total softballing of this issue for him.
Have been letting us live in peace, and we want to make sure we don't have any bad actors in there. And
excuse me, I'm going to take that personally for a second. Not on my behalf. I happen to be a fantastic actor, but I've worked with some bad actors, and they're not very bright, but they're good people. Some of them aren't. Some of them are very smart and are not good people. I don't know. It's a mix.
Sometimes you'll see some horrible things like we witnessed recently, but...
Say what it is. Again, sometimes you'll see some horrible things, which is what we had recently. Understand, this dude allows for the white supremacists that follow him to infer from what he's saying that what he means, the horrible part is the filming of Chauvin and him and the other officers getting charged. See what I mean? The horrible thing was George Floyd being murdered. That's the horrible. Say what the horrible thing is. So we know you don't think that, it was horrible that those poor officers have been mistreated.
99,
Thanks, Carl.
I say 99.9, but let's go with 99% of them are great.
I'm glad we hashed that out. Good. That 0.9% was a real hanging point. It really is a point of pride.
Great people, and they've done jobs that are record-setting.
Record-setting. What fastest hog tie? What are you talking about? Record-setting.
Record-setting. So
how are they record-setting?
Crime statistics are at a level that they haven't been at, and I just want to go.
Our crime statistics are at a level that they haven't been at.
Around the room and just ask.
Okay, before he does that, crime statistics aren't at are at a level they haven't been at. Great sentence, by the way. Can I show you the violent crime stats since 1991? You see a trend here? Do you see a trend that has sort of anything to do with who's in office, per se? I mean, you could arguably say that that was a steep decline from 91 to 2000 in violent crimes, rapes, murders, assaults. We're not, this isn't about, nonviolent drug offender stats. This is the stat of from 1990 to 2018. Notice that little bump coming up from 2014 and 2016 and staying higher than it was at its low point in 2014. Gee, I wonder who was out campaigning and ginning up violent thoughts a lot on the campaign stump and elsewhere during that time. Can't imagine. But you want to see record setting? Where do you think the record setting part of this fall off is? Oh, there's a ton of reasons. Absolutely, Adam. Technology has been a huge aspect of this. Job rates, all that stuff. 2020 is right in line. Yeah, exactly. 2020 is right in line with this downward arc. And the 1992 arc is exactly in 20-year lines with the highest level of lead in 92 into 94 is like the beginning of Clinton. So Clinton came in 92 and he left in 2000. So check that out. Just saying.
Each one of the folks.
So can we just settle on that? That's the record-setting stuff that we're talking about? Yeah, we'll do golf games of sitting president in a minute. That's a good idea. But so when he's talking about record-setting, first of all, the violent crime rate is higher than it was in 2014 when Obama got his best year in violent crime going down. It's an extraordinary drop. Linked entirely, by the way, in a 20-year cycle away from the removal of leaded gasoline from the United States.
To say hello.
Oh, we're going to say hello, are we?
And tell a little bit about themselves and the success they've had, and then we're going to go and have a meeting as to where we go from here.
So this isn't the meeting? You're going to go and have a meeting? What is this part just for show? What are you going to do? Like, is it a beer sucking thing? What's happening?
Okay, thank you. Please.
Mr. President, thank you for allowing us to come today and talk about something.
Push that button, yeah.
Push that button, yeah.
So, thank you for hosting this meeting and the ability to be able to talk about some very important things to law enforcement. This last year has been very trying to law enforcement. My name is Patrick Hughes. I'm the National President of Fraternal Order Police. In the last year, actually the last few months, we've dealt with COVID.
Patrick, good Irish name, Patrick Hughes.
We've lost 117 officers across this country who've been exposed to COVID, and I thank you for your leadership in recognizing there's not a single thing in the law enforcement profession when we were trying to bring hope to our community.
He doesn't act, I don't think he's going to joke with a bunch of them. I think he's got on his tough hat.
During this pandemic, that we did not receive some great assistance from your administration. So thank you.
The ass kissing must go on. By the way, if the White House or any administration didn't support the PPE aspects of like law enforcement interacting with people, that would be the story, not the other way around. You don't get points for the bare minimum. This is another, if we hadn't done anything.
That support. But we're dealing with another crisis now, a crisis that's really pushing us to our limits. I don't know a law enforcement officer across this country who is not just appalled by the incident that occurred in Minneapolis.
Well, there's a lot you don't know personally, just saying.
Minneapolis. But that one incident certainly doesn't reflect on the 800,000 men and women across this country that go to work every single day and try and make their communities better. So thank you for the chance to have dialogue. Looking at us as a profession, we recognize that it's time for us to have some good, deep discussion and look within and find ways to improve the criminal justice system. And I stand here to tell you that we want to sit at the table and have that discussion. So thank you for hosting this.
Thank you, Patrick, very much. I appreciate it. Ashley, please.
Mr. President, thank you so much for hosting this.
Ashley, turn your microphone on. Oh, by the way, we're rotating. They were not 100% sure that the Fraternal Order of Police would be lovely to President Trump and completely kiss his ass. And later on in the meeting, I doubt that they are, because they're going to have to address the fact that he keeps encouraging bad behavior by certain cops. And there are a lot of them that are taking him up on it, which is dishonorable to the force and to the idea of policing that we have in this country. It's why, the non-military policing that we have.
First and foremost,
I'm Ashley Moody.
we have to ensure, before we can collaborate and make progress on areas in the criminal justice arena, we have to make sure we have space to do that and law and order controls, and we appreciate you.
Wait a minute. So before you can have conversations about this stuff, we just basically need to clear the fields. We have to wipe out the hellscape. Hey, Jeremiah. Hi, Spatial K. It was great.
Focusing on what is important, that people have the ability to express their opinions and protest in a peaceful way, but we cannot have attacks on law enforcement, looting. This will dismantle what we have built for so long.
Yeah, talk to him. Because the protesters themselves are, in some cases, turning the bad people over to the cops. A bunch of cases, the instigators are either Antifa wannabes or boogaloo boys and right-wingers who are trying to foment stuff.
Florida, we are at a 48-year crime rate low. We have not been this low in crime in some time. And I believe...
Yeah, no kidding.
Just people like you that have supported law enforcement.
No, I'll tell you what it is. It's called a trend for decades.
And I believe in any administration and any criminal justice system in any state, we can always make improvements. And I admire that you are willing to dig in and have these conversations.
Dig in. They're going to dig in.
And do that. I think that moving forward, the idea that we would ever dismantle our police administrations comes...
Stop floating it. Nobody really thinks that.
From not
it's goofy.
Only as the Attorney General of the great state of Florida, as a federal prosecutor, or as a judge for over a decade.
I shouldn't say nobody. I don't want to be guilty of the same thing that they do. And he's like, I don't know a single police officer who is like, yeah, I've seen a few. And so they definitely exist. They suck. And they endanger the lives of other cops by being awful. But I'm not going to say nobody has thought ever. In this country and in this world, there's 7.6 billion people on the planet. Somebody's thought of everything at least once.
But as the wife of a law enforcement officer, I see what these men and women do for our communities. They rush in to save us when other people rush out. They deliver babies. They charge in when someone's hyped up on fentanyl and just beat his wife and his kids and rescue them. I mean,
fentanyl. And why is it a he? So one of the biggest problems that they have in Indiana and in Louisville, Kentucky, which are, they share a border, is the rise in fentanyl, where people use it in their car, they die of an overdose, and there's so much in the car that when they come upon a person who looks dead in a car, they smash the windows, and the cops get such a dose of fentanyl that they have to be hospitalized. This has been a common occurrence all through the Midwest. So seldom do they confront fentanyl users who are hopped up. You're thinking meth, lady, or cocaine of some sort. Fentanyl users usually die in their sleep in a hot car with a baby in the seat behind them.
Expect great things. We have to support them. We have to ensure that they're safe. And at the same time, we must remain committed to improving our system, and I admire that about you, President Trump, that you're willing to do that, and we stand ready to assist you.
Well, thank you very much, Ashley. You're doing a great job in Florida. I get the
Yeah, gee, I wonder why he has a politician from Florida down there and an AG at that who might have some say in how voting rights are applied. By the way, since she's the AG, maybe she'd want to talk to Trump about the fact that he is registered to vote in Florida, even though he does not have an address there. And it is illegal for him to use Mar-a-Lago as his home address because that is a private club. And the contract that he signed with the state when he turned that property into a club precludes him being able to use it for himself or anyone else as a residence. You can't rent out the top 10 floors of whatever the building on the property is as, you know, apartments on the club. It's a club. You come and go. Nobody stays more than overnight there.
You're doing a great job. Thank you.
You're doing a great job, except where you're not arresting me for voter fraud. And Steve Bannon, and Kayleigh McEnany, and Ann Coulter.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and staff here at the White House for hosting this meeting. My name is Rob Pride. I'm the National Chairman of Trustees for the Fraternal Order of Police. And I'm also here today as a sergeant working the streets during this time of crisis in our nation. And the reason I'm so happy to be here today to represent the rank and file is because, number one, it is important for everybody to know that there is not one law enforcement officer in the country that I've spoken to.
But okay.
With friends and colleagues from all over the country that looked at this horrific incident and remotely thought that there was any...
Whoops. Oh, I lost my headphones died. Hold on one second. I'm switching. I've got to switch. It was telling me to charge, and I just didn't listen. I don't know what I was thinking. My bad. Let's see if I can get these actually turned on. Yep. Now I look like everybody else who's doing a call-in on a show. Hold on. Monitor. We do monitors. There we go. Yeah. And by the way, is it just me or does this dude look like a sergeant? Dude is gigantic. Like, I think they sat him there just to scare Jared. Like, no, I'll sit over here by Jared, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Thing right about it. The great vast majority of men and women in law enforcement are appalled by what happened. But that vast majority is also, as the president has always said,
always?
Already said.
Gotcha. Corrected himself. He hasn't always said it. He said it today. He hasn't always said it.
Those are the good men and women of law enforcement who work hard every day to make their community safe. And on behalf of that rank and file, we applaud this meeting and we're glad to be here because there's no doubt in anybody's mind, as General Moody already said, that there's room for improvement, and we know that. And we're happy to be at the table, and we're happy to welcome that input and do what we can to be better police in this country, better police for our citizens and our communities. And we're happy to be a part of this conversation, and that's why we're here. So thank you.
Great job,
and very
Rob.
much appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob. Great job.
Thank you, Ron. Great job. I don't know what you do. I don't know what you're talking about.
We've known each other a long time now. Really good. Jared, please.
Oh, good. We get to hear from Jared. Does everyone have their babblefish in their ear?
Thank you, Mr. President, and
we're doomed.
Thank you all for joining. We've really...
Thank you, 3PO. It's nice to see you here.
Over the last 3.5 years, have had the opportunity to grow very close with law enforcement. We worked very closely.
Yeah, well, yeah, except the ones that you excoriate as the scum of the earth for actually bothering to police you. It's really interesting how law and order you are once we're talking about crimes other people commit.
Together to bring forward to this country criminal justice reform. The law enforcement community heard the cries from the community, saw the injustices in the system that needed to be fixed.
And masturbated. I'm kidding.
They responded by coming together to fix it, and it's been a great partnership to do that. Those reforms make our communities safer and have made our system fairer, and that's the type of action that we've been able to accomplish by working together. So
why aren't you, I guess he's talking about the First Step Act, correct, so the First Step Act, by the way, has to do with federal, like prisoners more than anything. It's the criminal justice reform aspect of it, and it changes aspects of the Controlled Substance Act and what else? Let's see, Title for miscellaneous, including those that place prisoners as close as possible, no more than 500 miles away their primary residence, where practicable, encouraging home confinement for low-risk prisoners, lower the eligibility rate and age, and reduce to the time served requirement for compassionate release, broaden the prisoner population eligible for compassionate release to include terminally ill offenders, because, if, because you want the Weinsteins of the world, to get one last, poke at life before they kick off, you know what I mean? If they get, it's sort of like a Make-A-Wish Foundation thing for rapists, That said, let's see, like some of the stuff is obviously has been around for a long time. It all worked its way into this bill. It's a good thing. There's still a bunch of things that need to happen, but the 8 Steps Act, or the 8 steps that that everybody wants to act on right now, strengthening the role of patrol officers to emphasize the importance of their contact with community by ensuring adequate staffing to accomplish their duties and proactive time to build relationships, establish geographic deployment of patrol officers to promote relationship and partnership building within the community, amplifying supervision by discouraging sergeants from regularly handling calls for service, but instead familiarizing with agency goals and providing effective supervision to patrol, reinforcing in-service training that applies a systems approach with measurable goals, adult learning principles, and improves leadership and communication skills. That just sounds like corporate speak to me, but fine. Adopting a problem-solving attitude that acknowledges the importance of organizational development, a collaborative approach to community safety, and assessing the impact of solutions. Like, maybe we shouldn't rush in there in a situation where we're dealing with people believing that the cops are violent with violence, that kind of thing. 7, expand information sharing through collaborative partnerships among agencies to maximize resources. 8, adopting crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED. I don't know why they wanted that to be an acronym, that utilizes the environment and surroundings to create a safer community without the need for massive costs or changes on the community. And also on the end, identifying the typical implementation issues and recommendations on how best to address said things. Good idea.
What we've seen in the past is that the
right now, somewhere in a park, a priest is being torn apart by Rottweilers.
meetings together and the work together doesn't just result in reports and in nice talking points. It actually results in progress and actual policies that make people's lives better and make communities safer. So it's an honor to work together, and hopefully at this time where there's a lot of people in the country who are feeling different pain and feeling different concerns, law enforcement can be a leader in coming together and helping us work towards bringing solutions that can bring this country forward. So thank you very much for the partnership.
Thank you.
Yeah. And?
Thank you. My star.
Ew. My star. Jared's my star. My star. It's Drake.
Thanks so much, Mr. President. And thank you to all the law enforcement individuals in the room and for the work that you do on a daily basis. You know, when I saw what happened with George Floyd, it really made my heart sunk. It hit me to my core.
Look at Jared looking at him. He looks like he's like about to ask the waiter if he could be moved to another table.
As well as a lot of the other lives that have been lost. You know, as an African American, you know, I live in Southeast DC and live in a paradox where, you know, my wife is sometimes scared to walk the streets by herself. And but then in the same vein, as an individual, I've also had the fear of being in certain neighborhoods or driving certain types of cars as an African American, just because of my relationship with the police. And there's a lot of African American males across the country that have stories like that they can share. But I think law enforcement is there to kind of thread that needle and help us and protect us, and not to be demonized.
You want me to get the Jared hair and do a parody? I'll find something. I can make it happen. I have to get some sort of yellowing agent. Can I say for the record, this guy addresses two very important points. On the one hand, they live in what I guess we're to assume from the way he's talking, a largely black area in Washington, D.C., and his wife is concerned about her own safety in the community walking at night. She is afraid for her own safety. And he, at the same time, has expressed concern and fear, like a lot of other black men in this country, for driving a certain type of car in a certain type of neighborhood, meaning cops pulling you over thinking you've stolen the car because how could you possibly afford this? I think he's addressing both of those points very well. I would like to say, as sort of as an interjection, don't have a problem with anything that he's saying, but just kind of on top of it, if I may, that I think we put a little too much friggin' attention and care to stolen cars. A little bit, you know what I mean? Like, it's a piece of property, and it's important, and people need to get their car back if it's stolen, and all that. But the violence associated with it seems to be outsized for the thing itself. I can understand how somebody running into a house might get shot because they're running into a place where the person in that house might be concerned for their own safety, and now they are trapped in a building. Whereas someone running out of one, you might want to just catch that person. A lot of non-lethal means, you know what I'm saying? It's about assessing the actual threat. The same thing I kind of think is true of stolen cars and the perception of a stolen car. That's always weird to me. Like, if you check the license plate on something, it's going to come up as his. And the idea that this guy would be, fear for the fact that somebody would mistake him and endanger his life when he's in a rental car or a friend's car or in any of that stuff is, and I think, a material attachment act that isn't important. So.
And it's been very, very tough to see what happened and what's been impacting a lot of families across the country. But I think if we want real reform, like real reform that can change communities, it starts with law enforcement and partnering with them, not demonizing. Because I have a lot of law enforcement individuals in my life, and they're some of the greatest people I've ever met. And we can't let some bad apples represent something that's a core of any community. And so we look forward to continuing to partner with.
Yeah. The redhead really likes this. Redhead number 2, sorry. Like, is that D or dumb? I can't tell the difference, but the one over there in the orange tie or whatever is really into this.
You all to find solutions, because that's one thing I've learned with working under President Trump's leadership, that we're not just about talk, we're about action. And
yeah, some of the talk that he's about leads to some of the police violence that we've seen, which directly endangers the good cops you care about.
Communities leading on your leadership, sir, for you to take action, and it's been an honor to serve, and I look forward to the discussion.
And I wouldn't be allowed to even speak and say what I wanted to say unless I say that part 2, because hail dear leader.
Great to have you with us. Great job you're doing, too. Thank you.
Whoever you are.
Please, Chief.
Chief?
Good afternoon, Mr. President.
The walls of the 53rd Precinct were bleeding. How do you explain that?
President, Mr. Vice President, again, thank you for putting this important meeting together. Probably one of the most important meetings in our profession.
I've seen every kind of combustible material known to man. And what we saw
in my 43 years.
Too much Ghostbusters too soon?
As a law enforcement officer. And
oh, Pence is next. This will be glorious.
You know, I won't echo some of the things that have been said about the horrific incident that brought us here today, but what I
Why not?
will say is this. What it's going to take to make the appropriate changes in law enforcement is courageous leadership. And there are countless courageous leaders in law enforcement across this nation.
You should probably start counting them then. Just, if I could, just saying, maybe the problem is that, while we're counting the bad apples, you might want to...
that are willing to step up to the plate and look at new ideas to make our profession better and how we connect with our community. And I think one of the most important things, Mr. President, that you have done is you've listened to IACP and something we've wanted and asked for 2 decades, and that's a National Commission on Law Enforcement and Administration of Justice. And
Okay, how many times have we heard Republicans crap on Democrats for forming commissions to figure out a way to deal with an issue? Do we need to just go back? And this dude is thanking the president for doing something that he and his buddies always crap on Democrats for doing. Anytime you're like, we need to form a commission. And I got news for you. The more complicated the issue, the more complicated the issue, the more you need a commission about it. If a solution is simple, then you don't need one. But a complicated issue, especially one that's deep and goes back decades, if not hundreds of years, you're gonna need a commission. You're gonna need community leaders, you're gonna need police officers, you're gonna need corrections officers, you're gonna need people who represent former gang members. Like, think of all the people involved in this issue and bring in people who are mistreated by the police and have them go over what went wrong in that altercation, how they think it started from their perception, have the cop that's there testify why they thought it went that direction. Look at how human interaction by two strangers in a high-tension situation repeatedly, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of times a year, lead to some really gnarly outcomes and some violence, both directions, by the way, because I got news for you, too. Cops pass around the shooting videos of cops that get shot by people. They watch, every time there's a new one, you never see it on social media, ever. I have never seen one on, I'm sure they're on some of the other sites, but Twitter, Facebook, all the, you don't see the videos that, and they're public, but they're, the body cam footage of people who shoot cops. Every time a new one happens, it gets passed around like crazy. And a cop goes to their job that day with the memory of just yesterday, a guy was going, hey man, I need to talk to you for a second. Can you slow down for a second? Can you take your hands out of your pockets? I want to talk to you for a second. Yeah. Can you take your pockets out of your hands out of your pockets for me? Can you do that? Can you do that? And this dude pulling out a gun and just going dut, 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 and shooting the cop in the stomach and running away. And the cop goes to work the next day with that on their mind. You don't, I don't. The average person doesn't. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American. They don't carry that around with them all the time. They may carry the fear of the video that they've seen of a cop killing somebody and fear that way, which will ratchet up tension between a certain segment of the population that is armed. The sovereign citizen videos that we were seeing for, remember the 8 years of sovereign citizens refusing to leave their car because it's, the United States of Steve now because he's sitting behind the wheel and he doesn't have to show ID and all that nonsense. And then they would end up getting out and shooting the cops and driving away like they were Bonnie and Clyde because they have sovereignty over every material object that they own, including the car and the bullets in the gun. So you can't commit a crime with a gun that you shoot cops with because technically it's like the bullets are sovereign land. I mean, honestly, the nonsense. And so you have to, I think it would be better. I think part of this commission, if I were to add something, that if he's going, there's countless good cops, then start counting them. Start sending them forward. Because when you pin a medal on somebody for catching a murderer or a rapist or stopping somebody from killing somebody, we don't see that on the news. We don't see, the black woman cop who was assassinated in her car sitting at a stakeout, shot in the head, and her partner was shot in the chest. Just from somebody walking up unrelated to the case that they were investigating, walking up to the car and just firing into the car. That doesn't make the news. And so part of it might be to balance out the experience that we're having so that cops feel heard and that they know that we're making the distinction.
instead of they all have to line up behind anybody because they're afraid that if one crack shows, the whole thing falls apart.
I want to thank you for establishing that, because now more than ever, that commission is incredibly important. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Mr. VP, please.
Mr. VP. You can't even remember his name, Kenny? Remember the what was Mr.
We're honored to have with us today our amazing Vice President, Mike Pence, and his wonderful wife, Karen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And
thank you for doing this. The only bad thing is that today I'm not sitting right next to you, but at least I can sit across from you and gaze into those, I don't know what color your eyes are now. It's sort of a beige, orangey, browning red grayness. Either way, I'm chubbing, Your Excellency. Go ahead.
we're here to listen. I want to thank the Attorney Generals who are here, but most especially Sergeant, Chief, others, thank you. Thanks for what you represent, which is really the best of America. I told Chief Cass Stevens that my uncle was...
How would you know anything about the best of America? Mr. Fentanyl spike in your state, Mr. denying medical services to gay people and having an HIV spike because you wouldn't do a needle exchange, Mr. Women should have to drive 500 miles to have an abortion because it offends you even if it means they're going to die or never be able to have children again. Best of America.
Police officer in Chicago for 25 years. And I grew up with my 3 brothers and 2 sisters with great memories of visiting my grandparents in Chicago, seeing my uncle in his uniform, seeing him walk out the door, put his life on the line to protect and serve. And I want to promise you that you have a president, you have an administration that is always going to stand with men and women who serve and at great risk and great sacrifice protect our communities.
Yeah, the problem is your idea of who those people are the ones that do the abusing. Nobody thinks he's not going to stand next to the cops that are charged with violence. This is the guy who was like, I'll pay your legal bills, which he won't, by the way, if you get busted for assaulting somebody at one of my rallies, right? Again, this is those like vacillating, it could go either way language that they love to use.
I'm also, though, very grateful, Mr. President, to hear this afternoon a desire to have a conversation about how we can improve. As Jared...
That's the first, this afternoon. Oh, this is good. Welcome aboard, Pence.
Just shared a moment ago, this president's already demonstrated...
I don't know why Pence sounds like he's a Southerner. He's from Indiana. It's that rural Southern accent that they just make up.
His willingness to...
You're north of Kentucky and you're going to talk like you're from Tennessee? Kiss my ass.
...justice system in this country.
I grew up in Peekskill, Kentucky. I had a hardcore Southern accent growing up, and I got rid of it like a decent human being.
Passing historic criminal justice reform. And I
No, that is not Colin Powell.
want to express my appreciation to the law enforcement officials who are here at this table today, who were with us when we brought that bipartisan legislation forward, Mr. President, at your direction.
Bipartisan. Yeah. At your direction? You mean you're not going to tell the Republicans you're going to veto it like previous Republicans because you can't if you have any hope of getting a slice of some of the people? Like,
we're always about the business of making a more perfect union, and and we're going to be about that now.
Oh, now. Okay. Well, sure. No time like the president. It's 4 o'clock.
In the wake of the tragic event of now almost 2 weeks ago.
What tragic event was that? The death of George Floyd or the charging of the officers and the riots that came out of it?
I want to hear from you about how we can improve, but improve in a way that builds on that foundation of really the finest men and women in our country.
How can it not?
The bravest men and women in our country, the men and women of law enforcement. How we make sure that the men and women who dedicate their lives to law enforcement, who take risks every single day to keep our communities safe, are properly supported, and that the resources from the federal government, the support from state and local authorities is going to continue to hold up those honorable men and women who serve and protect every day. So thank you, Mr. President, and thank to all of those who are here.
Thank you, Mike, very much.
Thank you, Mike. It's so good what you said there or whatever, and I can feel your toes tickling mine under the table, even from this far away.
Mr. President, it's an honor to be here with you. Obviously, I've been part of your team for now more than 2 years.
So, we know where to place some of the blame.
Over the Domestic Policy Council just about a month ago, but running the Office of American Innovation before that. What I want to say very briefly is that
Why'd you take it over a month ago?
3 months ago, on this side of the White House, we gathered almost 1,000 Black leaders from around this country as we were celebrating Black History Month. And in that celebration, you talked about having the lowest unemployment, the lowest poverty rate this country had ever seen. It was a remarkable feat that deserves such great celebration. But
okay, here's the unemployment rates by educational attainment, bachelor's degree, less than high school, applying evenly to everyone, okay? I'd like you to notice the constant downward trend for people with less than a high school degree. Now, this is largely because of trade schools and other variants where the bachelor's degree or higher is a much more limited view of what the economy does. There's spikes in unemployment that go up around 2008, around 2001, 9/11. But if you look at the chart going downward, but for 2008, that's the direction it was going. It was completely in link with the bachelor's degree or higher. And there's a bunch of reasons why, if you have less than a high school diploma and you don't have a bachelor's degree and you're unemployed, it might be because you're in the process of going to school and you've got a full loan to go, or you're just not going to. Look during the Obama years. Look what he came in with as far as bachelor degree and less than high school right there. And look at this little spike, that 2014, that right before 2015. See that? Going up. Look what happened in 2016 right there, right here. That little kick up, that's when Trump's policy started kicking in. But still, the resilience of the unemployment rate has been going down since 1992 on a slow, gradual thing. And the only thing that tips it up are these extraordinary incidents. The only thing that resets it. The only thing that makes it bad for a period of time and makes it have to recover. 9/11 and 2008. So tell me again about how special he is.
here we are 3 months later, and it is a different.
And it's already better for Black people. Didn't you? Black people, haven't you seen this? This is so much better already. He had a bunch of Black leaders, you know, right, the right-wingers that are there or whatever, or the other ones who can stomach it, were all there. You know, Kanye, bunch of red hats, they were all there. You know, you had a show of force, and things are already better. I mean, they're so much better.
Time for our country. But on Friday, we had another major announcement. 2.5+ million jobs created in a time of such darkness.
Yeah, no. Go check the figures. Miscalculation by the, yeah. No, not 2.5 to 3 million jobs created.
Destruction. And it reminded me.
And no job is created when people are just going back to work. Nobody created those jobs. Those already existed. Everybody is on hold. You don't get points for creating jobs that were dismissed and told to go home when they finally come back. What the hell is that?
That while we are in the midst of the great American comeback, while we are going to be renewing and rebuilding and restoring this country, that none of it is possible without our law enforcement, that none of it is possible without real safety and real security in this country.
I don't know. I mean, I think the Amazon and the Cupertino offices, they have pretty good security forces there or whatever. If you tried to storm the place, they'd even know you were coming just from the tweets you were sending.
So really, for the great American comeback with your leadership, Mr. President.
Yeah, everybody's trying to push that great American comeback thing to him because he keeps saying transition to greatness, and everybody's like, that is the dumbest thing.
And as we cut poverty rates again, and we slash unemployment again, and we build a country where every man, woman, and child has a real shot at the American dream.
Okay. I already showed you the track of unemployment going down. The artificial spike created by this disease has nothing to do with the loss of jobs like 2008 did. It is a completely different circumstance. The transmutation of some jobs, because you have to do it, operate things differently for the safety of everybody for a while, are going to take longer to get back. But this fantasy that somehow, that if you lost 40 million jobs, when those 40 million jobs go back to normal slowly, that you've created 40 million new jobs is insanity.
It begins today. I believe it begins with the people in this room.
Oh, finally. It starts today. Great. Cool. Right after, are you sure it's today and not a very short period of time? Because I think if you ask him, it's going to be in a very short period of time.
It begins with a law enforcement that is supported, that is stood up, and that I know you and the Vice President, all of us stand beside as we move forward. So thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
It's nice to nuzzle your buttocks.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to work very closely with folks like Sheriff Childress and Attorney General Cameron and Attorney
Who are you? Say your name. We can't see your nameplate. Mr. Self-Important.
Moody, who
he didn't introduce you because Trump doesn't even know who you are. Thank you, Georgina.
Their time to come up here to be a part of this very important conversation. As somebody who has law enforcement in my family as well, it's a very important conversation. And again, everybody that I've talked to at the elected leader level, but also at the rank and file level, was just appalled by what happened in Minneapolis. But out of that comes a commitment, a redoubling to make improvement across the country at the state and local
Thanks,
and federal level. And really pleased to have such strong partners in the Intergovernmental Affairs Office to work with to help make that progress under your leadership, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very
Just how can I say as little as possible and get the hell out of here?
much. Mark?
Thank you. His chief of staff is going to say something. What do you got to say, chief of staff?
Mr. President, for your...
Let me guess. Your leadership is fantastic, and without it, we would in a hellscape. And also, you look fantastically orange today.
leadership, and thank each one of you for being here today. When the cameras are not rolling and when there's no reporters around, there's unbelievable work that has been going on and will continue to go on.
Is that a dog whistle to all the people who think that there's going to be real reform? Like, I don't want you guys to worry about it.
Make sure that it's not just words, that it's action. Mr.
Okay, well, this is all words then, until then. Are you going to, I mean...
President.
The Democrats just introduced criminal justice reform. Maybe run that around the table?
Been a president of action. And for such a time as this...
Uh-huh. He took action to go down the stairs at the behest of the Secret Service and hide in the bunker for a night and inspect. I think it shows great verve and vigor and vim and virility by a president, if I can use 4 V's in a row, to go down and have the guts to inspect the bunker during a national crisis.
Action, again, will speak loud.
Action, not words.
And all of you that are gathered around this table today, we thank you for your action to be here and for
Oh, so that counts. Traveling counts. So we can write it off, is what you're saying.
the action that will come from this. So it's a pleasure to serve you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Action Jackson. It's a pleasure to serve you because action.
Very much.
You're an action hero, Mr. President. You're the last action hero.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, and the administration for allowing us to sit down with you once again today. We just want you to know that you are a friend. You have been very supportive of law enforcement. As a matter of fact, I've been 29 years with Livingston County Sheriff's Department. Tony Childress is my name. And I am
see, that has the decency to say your name, and we can see his placard.
The sheriff of Livingston County, which is the 4th largest county in the state of Illinois. We're 90 miles south of Chicago. I call it rural central Illinois, and we have an ideology that I feel and many others feel works very well.
And if for big cities, you mean?
That ideology is being a friend of the community, supporting the community with programs like shopping with the sheriff, like Halloween with the children.
Shopping with the sheriff? This is something I want to do. Shopping with the sheriff, but I don't shop with the deputy. Shopping with the sheriff. All right. And then Halloween with the children or Halloween with the childress?
Always being there as a listening ear for the community and working with the community. And Mr. President, we are happy to sit down with you and to try and do everything we can to make this nation better by keeping the community safe and by working with you and the nation in making a better place. Some of the things that we feel
okay, he's going to say something now.
In Livingston County will be very important is mandatory de-escalation training for all officers, prohibition of all
physical choking,
physical restraint maneuvers on or above the neck, and
yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Any physical acts that restrict the flow of blood or oxygen to the brain. Requiring all officers to render medical aid to all people, and requiring officers to intervene when physical forces are being applied to either stop or attempt forces that are being inappropriately applied. And
I like all these. These are good. This is something, this is the first, notice we're almost all the way around the table, and this is the first time anybody suggested stuff that actually should be implemented out loud instead of just this like, we're behind and these are too into this thing and, you know.
Is no longer required. So we look forward to working with you to hopefully get legislation involved in making these things.
I have not done the Kaylee presser yet.
True and making them law. And we just thank you again for allowing us to be here and
to actually suggest something of everyone at the table. The first,
know
yeah.
that you have a friend in Illinois, and anything you need, just let us know. Thank you.
You got a friend.
Again.
Thank you very much, Tony. You do a great job, too. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great job, fantastic. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. This is not going to be good.
Bill, please.
Thank you. Bill, please. I didn't call you Mr. AG because I know your name because I need to talk to you all the time because you're running interference. By the way, after we're done with this meeting, can you and I go take a huge shit on the FBI for daring to look at my financial dealings and how I'm manipulating the financial markets? And yeah.
Mr. President, for convening this session. It's good to join with all my friends and colleagues from the law enforcement community, many of whom I've worked
well, a bunch of them couldn't be here. They're indicted.
With over the years. I think law enforcement fully understands and has understood for some time the distrust that exists in the African American community toward the criminal justice system. And as I've been reflecting on this over the past few days and weeks.
As a black man myself, for purposes of this thought experiment anyways, I'm also a dinosaur if you watch that old show.
It struck me that for most of our history, in fact, maybe just up to 60 years ago, the law was explicitly discriminatory and did not provide equal protection. It's only been since the early 60s that our law has actually provided equal protection to African Americans.
Well, insisted upon it. It doesn't necessarily always get it.
And what we've had over the past 50 years or so is reform of our institutions so that they reflect those values, the values upon which our country was founded. And some institutions, such as the military, have done an excellent job of
desegregating.
Reforming. And law enforcement has too. That's one thing I understand from being Attorney General 30 years ago. And what makes me very optimistic today
is I'm going to drive home and not worry about being pulled over at all.
Is that the law enforcement leaders that we deal with, and you all know this, no one is more committed.
That's a cheap shot. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. There's entirely a chance that he could reek of bourbon and get pulled over because he's weaving onto the sidewalk and just be let go because he's the AG.
To reforming the criminal justice system and the profession of policing today. And there hasn't been a president recently who has been more committed. He didn't require the crisis we have today to get started with the First Step Act and with establishing a commission which has been looking at the very issues we're dealing with today.
Yeah, a commission.
And I know there's a lot of interest among police leaders for clarity and guidance on the use of force and some of the issues you were just talking about, Sheriff. Making sure the standards are out there, making sure they are trained, and making sure they are adhered to. And we're looking forward to working with you to get that done. The time for waiting is over. It's now...
Was there a time for waiting? Who was telling you that?
Incumbent on us to bring good out of bad. And we can do it, and the commitment is there in law enforcement to do it, so let's get it done. Finally, just let me say that the other aspect of this...
By the way, the First Step Act, I think it's a great start. There's some other stuff that absolutely needs to be done, but claiming the First Step Act has anything to do with what's happening now is ridiculous. That has to do with policing, or with prisons and sentencing, all the stuff that happens well after policing.
Is the rule of law and the need for law and order.
You mean it like the FBI when they are, along with the CIA, they're tapping the phones of foreign entities hell-bent on destroying our democracy, and friends of yours keep calling them at all hours and promising them things that are in direct conflict with the will of the American people and what Congress is doing?
Above the...
Like that kind of law and order?
Department of Justice's main entrance is the Latin phrase that from law and order, everything else comes.
Ew. Do they really?
Once it was reluctantly aroused. It was hard to get it aroused, and it is hard to get it aroused, but we got it aroused.
It's the foundation of civilization. And
it was invented after civilization because of a need that was not being met.
We have to make sure, it's our responsibility to make sure that our country is ruled by law and not by violence.
Thank you, Bill. Well said. Thank
Yeah, I was awake for most of it.
you very much. And Daniel, I got to know Daniel in Kentucky. He is a superstar in the making, if he is not already a superstar, but he had an incredible race, and we watched it together, and congratulations on that. That was some evening, right?
Thank you, Mr. President. It was, and obviously was grateful for your support and grateful for your leadership on this.
I'm grateful for you basically staying out of the state and not campaigning for me, because I never would have made it.
Current issue. We obviously have had the challenges with COVID-19, and now we are starting to see civil unrest in our society as it relates to some of the challenges that, frankly, black and brown communities have had, as General Barr so eloquently stated it.
Well,
we have a responsibility in this room with all of our law enforcement partners to look for ways as we move forward to do it better, to become better citizens, to become better neighbors. And I'm so thankful for the men and women of our law enforcement community that recognize the importance and sincerity of that need and have the interest not only to protect and serve.
I think technically, guys, too, if you're saying tokens or whatever, please check the language on that a little bit. But I would say that if you have more than one, then they're not token. I would argue that he is using them as human shields, that he would, with his druthers, replace them with someone at the table that weren't, but this makes him look good. He's, you know,
but
he benefits from the look. This is about optics.
also to demonstrate understanding of the challenges and look for ways to heal the fabric of this nation. We, as General Barr said, cannot allow for chaos.
So eloquently said, by the way. Wait a minute. Are you saying that Bill Barr is articulate? That's offensive to dinosaurs.
In our streets, we can allow for peaceful protest, but we cannot allow for chaos. We cannot allow for violence. Those in this room that know that. Those that have been peacefully protesting know that. But our challenge today is how can we move together to better our communities, to better our society in a meaningful way. I'm honored to be a part of that discussion as somebody from the Commonwealth of Kentucky who
Yeah, we're still not a state, by the way. Even though there's a Kentucky State University, it's a lie. It's a horrible, horrible lie. Kentucky is a Commonwealth. Like, is Maine or Massachusetts? Is Maine a Commonwealth? There's a couple of other ones.
represents Kentucky and
very communist, the whole thing. Commonwealth. Why don't you just wear big sickle and hammer, you pinko?
The civil unrest that we are seeing there. So I appreciate you assembling this roundtable. I appreciate all of you all that are here to be a part of this conversation, and I look forward to working with you all and collaborating to better our communities and our society.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan. Proud of you. So it's very interesting because I just see in some of the papers they want to end the police department, quote, end the police department in.
Yeah, no, the quote isn't end the police department. It's either defund, some are saying abolish. If you're going to say quote, quote the actual thing, not your paraphrase. Isn't that the problem you had with Adam Schiff?
Minneapolis, end it. What does that mean, end it?
Yeah. No, they want to abolish it and go to a county system, it looks like, if they're using the marker of Camden at all. But the majority of people in Minneapolis don't want that, not even close. It's a cartoon.
They had a couple of very rough nights, and they had a third night which was not good.
What did they eat something wrong before bed and get a rumbly tumbly?
In their police precinct, something I've never seen before.
They ran away from the. Yeah, they should have just stayed there and shot Minnesota residents.
A mayor that asked them to abandon.
Over a building.
Now they've abandoned the mayor.
That they can rebuild.
It looks like. Very, the opposite of far thinking. You know, you say.
What's the opposite of far thinking? You mean very short-sighted? Jesus, what a dipshit.
Thinking, is that far thinking? So they had 3 really bad nights, and then we.
The opposite of, wait a minute. The opposite of far thinking, if you really think about it.
They had 3 really bad nights, and then I insisted on bringing in the National Guard, and all of a sudden it was like magic. It was.
No. The Floyd family started speaking, then the violence started to ebb, then you showed up 2 days after that.
In good shape. They helped with the police, but the police were told to leave their posts. Nobody's ever seen anything like that.
Yes, they have.
But we insisted on having.
The police aren't there to shoot American citizens.
Protection for that great city or that great state.
Minneapolis?
A great state, Minnesota. What a horrible thing. That's where it started, and we ended.
What started? What started? Say it. Say George Floyd's death. Don't allow for the inference that what you mean was horrible was the Chauvin getting busted, the other cops getting charged, and riots happening. Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like you're blowing off the entire thing. Say what the horrible thing is so your followers don't think you mean the other thing with a wink and a nod and a QAnon.
Very strong there once we got involved. We got involved right from the White House, and we weren't going to let that happen.
Yeah, the bunker. You never left, right.
To that city or that state. And I think a lot of people took notice. The police are doing an incredible job. As I said, their records are being broken in terms of lack of crime. The lack of
record lack of crime. There's really just a shortage of crime everywhere. You know what I mean? Like we need, why is that? Why is there, look at this horrible, why can't we jumpstart this? How are we going to make America great again with a graph like this? All graphs should go up, not down. This isn't greatness we're watching. There's a tremendous lack of crime here. I personally feel cheated. We need more crime.
crime. We had a tremendous year, tremendous 12 months, a tremendous 36 months, I think you can say, during the term. Then
you mean a tremendous drop in violent crime? Have you now? Have you had a tremendous 36 months from, there you go, 15 into your campaign, into 16, spike, slightly tipping back down to normal, but still higher than 2014. Yeah, really? You're gonna? That's what it is. We've had a tremendous 36 months, have we?
Add 6 months to that. 3.5 years, it's gone by very quickly, but we've had a tremendous record on crime.
Well, yes, you have a tremendous criminal record as a president. You've been impeached for it. You were not removed from office because some of your co-conspirators blocked that. But yes, you have a. I finally agree with him on something. He has a tremendous record on crime.
And we're going to work and we're going to talk about ideas how we can do it better and how we can.
You mean the ones that were mentioned over there? Can you bring them up? Are you capable of that, or are you just looking at your notes?
Do it, if possible, much more.
If so, if possible. If not, you know.
Or gentle fashion, a thing like happened should never have happened.
A thing like happened should have never have happened. Which part? George Floyd's death or Chauvin's getting charged with murder and his fellow officers being charged as accessories? Because if you don't say it, I'm going to think the second one.
And plenty of things shouldn't have happened. But we can.
Yes, I agree. We also agree on that. Plenty of things shouldn't have happened. I mean, honestly, like season 4 of Bosch was a waste of time. There's a lot of bands, their third album, you could completely pass over. I also think that the introduction of the harmonica to heavy metal in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, is part of the reason why, you know, record sales flagged. A lot of things shouldn't have happened. Like he shouldn't have been allowed to ever run a charity, considering he was doing. You shouldn't have been allowed to use charity funds to buy a painting of yourself and write it off on your taxes.
Can't give up the finest law enforcement anywhere in the world. There's nothing like it.
Compared to what?
Few people, few countries have our record. And
few people, few countries have our record. Yeah. Other country, like, do we want to talk about gun deaths? Do we want to?
I'm talking about the positive record. So we're going to.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, sorry, I was mistaken. I thought you meant just the record of. But I thought you were talking about like Wham's 4th album that never got released because George was ready to move on and Andrew Ridgeley just didn't want it put out without proper press because he was going to have to pay all the breakage out of his own pocket.
Discussing some ideas and some concepts and some things.
Some things, you know, like your Chinese flag pin.
But we won't be defunding our police. We won't be dismantling our police.
No, we won't.
We won't be disbanding our police. We won't be ending our police force in a city. I guess you might have some cities that want to try, but it's going to be very sad situation.
Great. So, hi, dummy. You're the president. Please tell Republicans that you want to federally mandate whether or not a city has a police force or not. Go ahead.
If they did, because people aren't going to be protected. These people do a tremendous job of protecting citizens of our country, and that's what they're paid for. But whether they were paid or not, that's what they do. And
no, that's what they're paid for. It's a job. Yeah. If you're going to push back against the whole defunding kind of thing, you might want to go that this is a job people get paid for, because nobody wants to do it for free for very long. And if they want to do it for free, you can't trust them. I mean, you're going to get like armies of arsonists who call themselves firemen at that point.
You know, somebody put it very beautifully before where they said they protect people, risk their own lives for people they've never seen before, people in many cases they don't know. You're protecting the lives of people you don't know.
And who would even think that people would do that kind of a thing? I mean, I would never do that. That's ridiculous.
It's an incredible thing. It's a great honor to be with you all. And we'll have a little discussion now. Thank you all very much for being here.
President, Mr. President,
No questions.
can we just ask you a question?
Not a word.
Mr. President, do you believe that kneeling is peaceful protest?
We're leaving. Let's go.
Get out. Get out. Kevin, let's go. Kevin, let's go. We're leaving. Are they filming Home Alone 4? We're done. Let's go. Kevin. Get out. So yeah, I want to show you something real quick. You know how I showed you that the violent crime statistic going down? Notice the unemployment rate also drifting down over time. Only spiked around 2008, which threw a monkey wrench in the whole thing for people with and without a degree. Let's see. Oh, I did the stock market one. Here's the Dow Jones for what, 100 years? Is we doing? This is one. Yeah, 1915. Here's the stock market. Oh, 1932 was bad. Oh, there was a little dip around 1950. This kind of went up. Oh, what happened here? 1983. Remember that? 3 years into Reagan, 82. Yeah, there we go. And then look at this. It keeps going up and keeps going up, and then whoop, levels out. Iraq War, all that kind of stuff, and then bam, the Bush administration happens. Now, who does the cleanup and brings it back? Look at this. Look at that. As it just goes up and up and up and up and up. And yeah, there we go. And so here's where we'd leave, like, before. There you go, November 2016. Here's January 2017. This was the stock market the first year Trump took office. 20,000. 20,976. And here's the bottom out. Let's see if we can find it. It's 8 something, or 8,532. It went to 6,400, but I have to widen that out to show you. But this, see this big jump right here? See that? Look at that climb. Look at that climb. That is outsized recovery from this other climb. See that? See that business? Look at that. Look at that. Clinton. Bang. Look at this. Here we go. Here's Reagan. You know, let's look at this business. Here's Reagan takes over in 1980. Stock market is 2,800. Takes a crap, goes back up. Here's Reagan leaves office in 88. Okay, that's Reagan's leap from this after the dump down. So if his policies hadn't made this crater and they had to fix it, it would have stayed basically around here and gone up at the same rate it's going up here. Soon as he loses, Bush takes over, basically a flat line of growth. Just like from this point to this point, marginal growth. Then you've got Clinton taking over. Whoop. Look at that. Then you got Bush coming in. Crash. Then you've got Obama coming in. What do you think the chart for this thing, when it levels out from 2016, goes to this point, vacillates back and forth, is basically going to be a tip point. Basically, it's Bush 1. That's the growth arc of the Trump years. That's right. It took a crap when Reagan cut the tax rate and then went up when he gradually increased the tax rate. Exactly. So can we like, so this whole like, it's unbelievable, it's going up. It's always gone up. It jags down, but if you'd invested, you know, in 1921 when it was 972, if you put $100 in there, you'd be a billionaire by now. And if you put $100 in now and you lived 100 years, you'd be a billionaire at the end of that too. come on. And and don't get me, absolutely. The stock market is currently artificial on fire thanks to stim money and foreign Saudi investment. No question. There's $1 trillion of Saudi investment in the stock market, which, by the way, it came in right about here, in that little area. And that's why we've been kissing their ass for a long time, because we're afraid that if they take it out, we'll eat it. And they'll pull it out and we'll be, it'll make things crash again. It's still a crash, kind of like the job losses during COVID, where people will be able to buy those stocks because they'll be available. They haven't lost value. The companies don't become less valuable or less profitable because the Saudis yank a bunch of money out of there. It's not going to, and these days, it'll be filled in a second by people all over Europe and all over the rest of the world who are putting money in there. So, this part right here, this whole Trump coming in 2016, it's what, 20,000, beginning of 2976 when he comes in, goes up to 27, still less than Obama's, and then it's jagging back and forth the entire time, doing this all last year, and then it takes a powder because of COVID, and then it's going back up there. But this difference between here and here is exactly the same thing as Bush 1. You're going to look at the same growth arc. It's just a volume thing. There used to be 972 points in the stock market. Now there's 27,110. So I got news for you. The economy continues to grow because people continue to be born. The populations increase. There's 100 reasons why. U.S. violent crime rate has gone down since 1990 at its peak. It was already lower before that. And the unemployment rate is also snaked down since 92. And the only jumps in it at all have been caused by outsized external forces, the worst being the 2008 crash. The recovery being worse for people with less than a high school education. But largely because a bunch of people went to school and all kinds of other things afterwards because they didn't have any job prospects for a while. So, So absurdity. Let's see how much. Yeah, we're good. Let me. I want to jump back into. And we'll look at Kayleigh McEnany's presser. Let's see, White House. I have to open up their site so I don't get. Watch it live. Let's watch her live.
Toward the positive side.
Oh, and I'm not. Get back out of here. You get back.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm salmon today. We're all salmon.
Everyone, the transition to greatness has officially begun. Friday's jobs report was encouraging, to say the absolute least.
It was also a farce and based on a, quote, miscalculation. There was apparently a note at the bottom of the page that said, hey guys, we didn't count a bunch of stuff. And one of the reasons why it arced back up artificially was we made not furloughing or letting your workers go a part of getting the CARES Act stuff, which includes payment for rent, equipment, and other kind of stuff like that. So a lot of people had to hire back their workers, but those workers were not working. They were just being paid their paycheck, which was part of the CARES Act, which was what, 5 times what you guys were asking for to stimulate the economy?
The jobs in this country, we had more than 2.5 million added. The prediction.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't. 2.5 million people went back to work as they eased restrictions around COVID. We didn't add jobs. There is no one that's gotten a job during this time that wasn't working before, unless they were, I guess, retired medical professionals.
Was that 7.5 million jobs would be lost. This was a 10 million swing toward the positive side, and in fact, the greatest number of jobs.
Because the CARES Act made everybody put people back on the rolls or they wouldn't get the funds.
Created and.
That's why the Democrats wanted it in there.
Single month on record.
No, not the greatest single month on record. Not the single greatest month on record. You didn't add any jobs. Not a single job was added. Are you high? Who thinks this? How?
Is extraordinary. 225,000 manufacturing jobs, 464,000 construction jobs, and 1.2 million leisure and hospitality jobs were all.
They were all furloughed and they came back. We didn't add, there aren't, what, 225,000 new manufacturing jobs, brand new. Nobody opened multiple factories in this. And when they did, it was to make swabs and ventilators, a lot of times repurposing a workforce that they were going to have to let go.
Added in May. Beyond that, the number of workers who reported being on temporary layoffs decreased by 2.7 million in May. And more than that, and this was a great number that was pointed out to me today by the CEA, 300,000 jobs were created for Black Americans in particular.
No, they went back to jobs. Those were the jobs that were not, at the time, considered essential, that have started to open back up again. You didn't invent jobs for this. There aren't, whatever your, let's say your baseline's 2%. If you drop to negative 2% and you go back up to 0, you haven't added any jobs. You haven't created jobs. Are you drunk?
That's in May, and that was a 1.7% increase, so very encouraging numbers there from the CEA.
Oh my God.
That they highlighted for me.
Who actually believes that shit? People are going back to work, to the jobs they were furloughed from or laid off from because of COVID, because states are opening up again, because we're, for better or worse, they're tracking towards trying to open the society again. Those people are going back to work. They're not, you didn't create any jobs. It's not, look at that sign. The greatest number of jobs created in a single month on record. That is remember that whole bullshit about I will never lie to you? That is a fantastic lie. That is incredible. That's a level of ridiculous.
LS numbers that they highlighted. May's jump in average weekly hours also is an encouraging sign, because increasing hours is a sign that employers need to hire more workers to meet.
No, that means the people that they have hired are all the people they need the rest of the time. The people are working overtime because they're catching up with stuff, orders, other stuff that weren't done during the time everyone was laid off. They're not going to add people to shifts because production hasn't gone up. It was artificially shut off for 2 months. This is moronic.
Demand for all.
Do you have any idea how weak-minded you have to be to have this poor a grasp on economic policy? I mean, say what you will, but I realize but think for a second. Think for a second what she just said. 2.5+ million jobs were created, added in May. Notice how the big numbers say added, but it says greatest number of jobs created in a single month on record. Created. That is a lie. Followed by people working overtime as a sign they're going to have to hire more people. Bullshit. Temporarily, to make up for backlog, they're going to work overtime, and they're going to pay some overtime for people to do that, to catch up if they've got the orders sitting. And then as soon as they're back up to speed, they're either going to, if they did take anybody on, they're going to lay them off, to the catch-up workers, or they're simply going to just say, okay, don't work any more hours. And those people are going to take a drop in pay.
Private sector employees, average weekly hours increased by 0.5% to 34.
Ooh, 0.5%. 0.5%. That'll change the tide of economic development.
0.7 hours, the highest level since the series began in 2006.
Yeah, because no one was working, and then people went back to work, and a portion of them are working more because they work in small businesses or small factories or other places, and they need to catch up on their orders or the company will collapse. You dumbass.
73% of small businesses are open. That is up from the 52% right before the April jobs report.
Tell me the percentage that never closed but shifted what they were doing to sell stuff online.
Reference period. Also, workplace visits are up roughly 40% from its pandemic low. The stock market is
up 43% from its pandemic low, which was what, 0, 12%? What was it?
Absolutely soaring. We saw with the S&P that it had its greatest 50-day rally in history.
Yeah, because it went in the shitter. What are you talking about?
Dow likewise is also booming. The markets clearly have confidence in President Trump. The jobs.
No. They're buying in low because they know it's going to heal and go back to its regular arc that it's been on ahem for 100 years, and they want a piece of the action. This isn't American money, you dimwit.
President who created the hottest economy in modern history once and will do it again. Also, commentators and economists have noted how great this jobs report was.
Oh, good. Commenters. Thank goodness. Well, there you go.
Yesterday, we saw Mohamed El-Arian, the chief economic advisor at Allianz, say this will go down in history as the biggest positive data shock for the markets and the economy, and you saw how surprised the markets were. They surged.
Yeah, based on false information.
On Friday, capping a strong week with the NASDAQ closing at a record high. He said it was also very surprising to the economists. Not a single one thought that we would create jobs.
We didn't.
Everybody expected the unemployment rate would go up. It did not.
Yeah, it did.
Also, senior economic.
And a bunch of those people, by the way, who are not furloughed, who showed up in the May jobs report, who are getting paid, are still getting paid not to work.
Correspondent at the New York Times, Neil Irwin, noted that we have to think that the May employment numbers count as a strong win for PPP supporters. Obviously, the president signed that into law.
Yeah, but who added funds to it? Who insisted on the higher funds? Who asked for what, 200 billion and got 500 billion, and then another infusion of 300 billion when Mnuchin's friends stole a bunch of it? Who got rid of the IG in charge of making sure that the money got sent to where it was supposed to get?
Has been a big cheerleader of the PPP. Typical economist.
Oh, well then if he's a cheerleader of it, if he wants points for signing something that passed the Senate 96 to nothing?
Missed it by 10 million, as I noted at the top of the briefing. 10 million.
Wonderful. Who cares if it's true?
That's bigger than the entire state of Michigan nearly, and that's how much economists were off. Why is
So Michigan, if you live in Michigan and you don't have a job, it's not because of the president, it's because you're a loser.
it's happening? Well, it's happening because America has taken note of the fact that we have a president who ushered in the hottest economy in modern history.
Hottest economy in. Nah, I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to look at some of these charts and talk about hot economies. I don't know. I would say this is some hot economies from 1990 to 99. That's a pretty hot economy. I think a lot of people would. What is that? Starts at 57. No, wait, hold on. It was lower than that. Where is it? Let's go to actually when Clinton comes in. So whatever, January 93. Get in there, you rat. Yeah, it won't let me pick it. Okay, so let's just say April. 6,101.04. And wah bang, look at that. 16,927. So that's a 10,000 point jump. That'd be the hottest economy ever. This would be a pretty hot economy from here to here. But what's hot about this thing right here? Just the high number of volume? Is that what we're going on? Okay.
Record low unemployment for Black Americans, for Hispanic Americans, for the disabled, for our veterans.
No.
Paychecks were beginning to rise under the President Donald Trump economy.
No.
We have the great jobs creator in office, and America clearly has confidence in this president.
No, they just don't. They think the market's outsized strength, as the rest of the world is struggling with COVID, is a place to put their money. And that's true of foreigners.
You have a president who fundamentally understands how to put this country back to work, and we saw that in action with the Friday jobs report. And with that, I'll take questions.
Okay.
So start with John.
Kelly, what's the president's thinking on this growing movement to either
Thinking you're adorable.
defund or dismantle police forces across the country? And what
Fox.
reforms does the president think would be appropriate in the wake of the George Floyd killing?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The president is appalled.
Thank you, Chicago Flyby. By the way, give us a thumbs up and a like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff, and boilerplate and patreon.com/Hal Sparks and all those things. Hi, happy Monday.
The defund the police movement. The fact that you have sitting congresswomen wanting to defund the police, notably Rashida Tlaib, notably Biden advisor AOC Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a former Clinton and Eric Holder spokesperson Brian Fallon, wanting to defund our police across this country. It is extraordinary. And when you think the left has gone far and they couldn't possibly go far.
Yeah, should we be as shocked as when the president tells police to physically harm suspects whom at that moment they do not know or have not been charged with or have not been found guilty of a crime?
Because we all remember the defund ICE movement. They want to defund immigration and
Yeah, I remember when it was boosted like crazy by the Russians as well.
custom enforcement, and now they want to defund the police. This is extraordinary. This is rolling back the protective layers that protect Americans in their homes and in their places of business. He's appalled by it, and it's remarkable to hear this coming from today's Democrat Party. As for solutions, he's talking through a number of proposals. No announcements on that, but he definitely, as he's noted, recognizes the
No announcements on that. He's just, he wants to come out here and slam random, like, hyper-left Democrats and pin them on Biden, hoping he gets at least a point shuffle somewhere with somebody, which is just goofy as we deal with this, because Biden went to the funeral of George Floyd and prayed with the family. What an awful, awful man. And this president would never do that. And also, I don't know what changes should be made or anything like that. Like, he's not mentioned. I mean, we laughed about a couple, but I wouldn't say.
Horrid injustice done to George Floyd, and is taking a look at various proposals.
Does the president agree with any of the mayors across the country who are saying, I think we could take some of the money from policing and put it toward other programs that could be effective in community development, which could lead to the potential for a lesser need for policing?
Well, let's be clear. If the mayor of LA wants to defund police, take money away from police, Mayor de Blasio, the mayor of New York, wants to take money away from police, that means cutting of police. That means reducing police departments. That means defunding police departments, if not getting rid of them entirely. No,
you can have, like, local and even large cities to not have riot control, take those funds, like, not have tanks they have to service and that kind of stuff, and allow that to just be a National Guard issue if it's ever needed, and put that money towards community programs, community policing. Maybe even, I don't know, hire some more cops to walk the beat and engage with the community, as opposed to buying a bunch of bullshit military gear that they shouldn't be using because of the violation of,
he does not agree with that.
We all know.
And the rest of America does not agree with that.
I have two questions for you. As you are going over your reforms and what you think is needed, does the president feel that there is systemic racism in law enforcement?
The president's been very clear there are injustices in society. I've noted several for you that he's pointed out as a Republican primary candidate, noting the Sandra Bland video was absolutely horrible, noting George Floyd. There's a civil rights investigation into that. He definitely believes there are instances of racism, but look, he believes our law enforcement.
Listen to that, by the way. the horrible video of Sandra Bland, you could say, you know, how she treated the officer was horrible. There are incidents of racism. Okay, what do you mean? Do you mean against the Sandra Bland, or are you talking about racism towards white cops? You see how generic this language is?
The best in the world. He believes that by and large they are good people. The 750 who were injured defending this country
Don't pay attention to my armpit and the spray tan line.
from rioters and Antifa in the streets, as to be distinguished from the peaceful protesters. Those 750 officers who were hurt defending our country were heroes, as was David Dorn, a police officer who lost his life, and Patrick Underwood, who also lost his life in the last week or so.
He doesn't think that there is systemic racism in law
He believes
enforcement.
most of our police officers are good, hardworking people. There's a lot of evidence of that, and he has great faith in our police department.
Okay, well, my second question, does he still believe that NFL players who kneel as a form of protest against police brutality should be fired?
The president is very much against kneeling in general. The president has
Yeah, he hates it. You know, if you have to pick something up, you should, you know, bend over at the waist, especially if it's heavy. He's told me that all the time. He hates when I kneel. He likes it when I bend over. Like, he'll sometimes ask me to get things out of the trash can, and I'll kind of curtsy or kneel down to it. He hates that. He hates kneeling in any form. He wants you just, what, you know, kind of what we do, we call in the office the Barbie fold. He likes that better.
made clear for years that
Yeah, we hate kneeling. Like, that's why he would never take communion. He thinks Catholics are weak. He hates knights. I don't know if you've ever seen when people are knighted and they show respect for not only the royal family but their society in general, and they are penitent and show respect for the, you know, serving the country, giving their lives for it. When they kneel, that's just gross.
kneeling
He likes some kneeling, like he likes whatever kneeling Putin likes. Putin likes it when he kneels. It's a different thing, though.
is tied to our national anthem, that it does not respect our military men and women across this country. He's not
Yeah, it does.
a fan of the kneeling movement. He's made that very
The kneeling movement. You mean him? What do you call a kneeling movement? Him trying to stand after he kneels
clear, particularly because he thinks
without help?
disrespectful to our military, as the kneeling originated at the kneeling during the national anthem.
You think they should be fired?
I have no comments on that. He is against the kneeling movement, though, as he's noted on Twitter as recently as a few days ago.
Say yes, he does still think they should be fired?
I have no information on that, and I have not talked to him about that.
That's a yes.
Is there anything in the Democrats' policing act that the administration supports?
Yeah, that legislation, first of all, the text of it hasn't even been given to us. I've not talked with the president about that yet. He hasn't reviewed it yet.
We don't talk to them. What we'd like to do is get the legislation, and then after it's all written up, claim it was our idea, even though we've never seen it, and I just said it in front of you that we haven't seen it, that when it comes to our desk, we're going to pat ourselves on the back for signing it, even though it will pass with a majority, and that's so big we wouldn't be able to veto it if we wanted to.
He's looking at a number of proposals, but there are some non-starters in there, I would say, particularly on the immunity issue. You had AG Barr saying this weekend he was asked about reduced immunity, and he said, I don't think we need to reduce immunity to go after the bad cops, because that would result certainly in police pulling back, which is not advisable. So he has
Well, pulling back from what?
reviewed the legislation, but AG
As Carlin said, shoving a floor lamp up someone's ass? That kind of pulling
Barr,
back?
as a member of the administration, noted this prior to the proposal coming out.
Does the administration support the banning of the use of chokeholds?
Look, the president, again, hasn't reviewed this piece of legislation.
No.
The president is
It'll end up being in anything they put forward because, like you saw Sheriff Childress bring it up.
looking at what's a state issue, what's a federal issue right now. He's currently reviewing proposals actually on this very topic about police reform, so I'll leave it to him and not get ahead of him on that. But it's certainly...
That's right, Noel. That's what we're talking about with the, you can't, don't protect their head when you're going into the car and you touch it all gentle, you know, then don't do that.
We believe that the appropriate amount of force should be used in any police interaction with an individual.
But 2 weeks after all of this civil unrest...
I know what you're thinking, punk. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, I've forgotten myself in all this excitement. So you have to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? And spin the wheel. Dig, 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 dig. Ding, he reaches for his gun. Sorry.
Why does the White House not have a plan? The president said on Friday that his plan for combating racism is a strong economy. How does that work?
Look, that's an important part of combating racism is making sure that there's equal opportunity for Black
By the way, this is very similar to the language Bernie Sanders uses.
Americans in this country. This president, we hear a lot of words from Democrats about criminal justice reform that they want. This, well, they got
words. Oftentimes, those words that you hear are put in the form of bills that are voted on and pass the House, and then Mitch McConnell won't allow a vote on them in the Senate at all because he's afraid they would pass.
it with President Trump reducing racial sentencing disparities via the First Step Act.
Well, do you, punk?
Democrats talk about economic opportunity for Black Americans and people in vulnerable communities, and this president has done that with opportunity zones. It was a good start.
What? You mean enterprise zones? The rebranded, we've got the Affordable Care Act, which is so much better than Obamacare. We're using opportunity zones instead of enterprise zones. By the way, opportunity zones, that plays to the base idea that that they're looking for equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. That's been the big argument about equality on the right, that they've been making this distinction. Thank you, Critical. My day is going very well. Can't wait to see you live too. I can't wait till you guys come out. And thanks for the super chats, guys. And thanks for the bits, NCIS to Doctor Who. I want that to be my ringtone. Cheer 12, right? Thank you, Georgina, as well, too.
More than 900 places, creating private investment to help people get on their feet to start businesses in this country. HBCU's record
And then we can pull the rug out from under them later.
funding. This president has repeatedly, through his actions, stood up for the Black community, and a big piece of that is absolutely economic reform. And I'd finally note on the point of economic reform, the USMCA, these trade deals, the TPP, making sure that didn't take place, that directly advantaged hardworking men and women in Detroit who wanted their auto jobs. So his reformation.
Why would the TPP affect that? We're not in an auto race with the Asian Peninsula. We're not. What are you talking about? Is there an influx of Chinese cars or Indonesian cars or Thai cars or South Korean cars? Like, really, is Hyundai that big a threat?
With trade, reformation with trade, and also opportunity zones is helping to ensure that Americans of all races have the same opportunity in the economic playing field.
You're saying will eventually have a police reform plan.
He's looking at various proposals, so I won't get ahead of him. No announcements on that front, but he has been looking at them over the last few days. Yes.
Good Lord.
Yes.
There are reports that the administration is going to be pulling troops from Germany. Can you say how many and when and where are they going?
7,500 home.
What I would say on
how many did Putin ask for?
that is, first, we have no announcements at this time. I know there's
Uh-huh.
reporting out there, but as of this moment, there are no announcements. The president's continually reassessing the best posture for the United States military forces and our presence overseas. I mean, we remain committed to working with our strong allies.
Will he consult Angela Merkel before making a final decision?
I'll leave that to the president. Again,
No.
no announcements at this time.
And just one final, the new Lafayette Square fencing, do you have any indication
Thanks, Critical.
on when that might?
Next time. Okay, great. I appreciate that. I'll see you the next time I'm playing Rainbow Six. When we can relax.
Be removed or taken down since the protests have become more peaceful, and who makes that decision?
Yeah, I don't have any announcements with regard to the fencing. That's not something that's in White House control in terms of securing the perimeter. But what I would say is the president has recognized that the protests have largely been peaceful. Why have they been peaceful? It's because of the actions taken by this administration.
Because we beat the snot out of a bunch of bad people and a couple of good ones, and now everybody's afraid to come outside. That's been our message. I think we've done very well with that. I mean, what we're thinking about doing is putting a compilation together of police hitting people with batons and running over people with horses and cars driving into crowds of people, just playing that on a loop on the Washington Monument so people know what's coming if they try it again.
If you'll notice, Minneapolis
For Jesus.
was in chaos until the National Guard came in, and then it was secure. You had outside here in Lafayette Park, I noted the 750 law enforcement officers that were injured across the country. Well, 1/5 of those were in D.C., and the vast majority in Lafayette Park. And once the National Guard came in, D.C. was secure. That Monday decision by the
Thank you, Jill Carter.
president of encouraging governors to surge the National Guard made the difference. And the president's
No, no. All of these riots, all of the unrest, they all have a lifespan that, like, as the number of peaceful protests and large crowd gatherings increased, the violent ones went down. Curfews don't have anything to do with the protests themselves. After the curfew, most protesters went home. The violent actors have nothing to do with the actual issues themselves. They're taking advantage of it. It's a jerk around.
Recognize now that the protests are peaceful. He's recommended a winding down of the National Guard, very peaceful protests.
Yeah, only like shoot reporters in the face with rubber bullets if I say they're fake news.
For the weekend. So with regard to the security of the building, not a decision for the White House. Would refer you to Secret Service and Park Services on that.
Thanks, Critical. I'm looking at your shirt. Which one do you recommend? I think you can't go wrong with the big Zoltan. I'm just saying.
But the president has recognized the peaceful protesting and is encouraged by that. Yes, Jen.
Kaylee, on Hong Kong, can you say when will...
And since you game, the Streamlabs stuff is really cool. The knit cap with the little Zoltan on it that they actually knit on the thing, it's impressive. I like them.
Administration revoke Hong Kong's trade status? And also, do you think that that move would be the only thing the administration does? Is there something else planned? And do you think that China will listen? Are you seeing any signs of China relenting on Hong Kong?
Yeah, we haven't
No.
seen any updates from China thus far.
Yeah, the president isn't calling him. He's ghosting him right now on their dating app.
No announcements with regard to the timing of that, but the president has been very clear that China's replaced its promise of one country, two systems with one country, one system, which is what led the administration to make the announcement that it would begin eliminating policy exemptions that were given.
Yeah, that's what did it, not COVID and his relationship with Xi, and he feels slighted. Feels so slighted.
To Hong Kong, the special treatment that they once had.
Kaylee?
Yes, Steve.
Is there any, a week after what we saw in Lafayette Park last Monday night, are there any people here in this building who believe that, or does the
Anything that you say.
president believe that perhaps things went the way they shouldn't have gone? Is there any regret on the part of the president or anyone here about how people
That's adorable. This will be good.
were treated, people who were peacefully protesting, and how they were rushed out so violently?
No, there's no regrets on the part of this White House because, look, I'd note that
Told you.
many of those decisions were not made here within the White House. It was AG Barr who made the decision to move the perimeter. Monday night, Park Police also had made that decision independently when they saw.
So the lawsuit against Attorney General Barr is legit then. Thanks for actually creating a witness to this situation. I mean, that's how New York State just passed the Eric Garner law banning chokeholds. That's fantastic. Good news. I mean, she just hung Barr out to dry in one sentence. You think anybody's going to notice this? That piece of tape isn't going to get played?
Violence in Lafayette Square.
Yeah, there wasn't any violence at the time.
Before these.
That's like saying there was violence in Central Park at one time, so we can drive trucks over joggers.
Protesters were moved by Park Police, and they issued that tactical order. There were 3 loud warnings, and as I believe it was AG Barr on Face the Nation noted, that some of those protesters moved back and adhered to the warning, but others of those protesters started hurling objects, and that was unacceptable. And Park.
So the ones who weren't hurling objects, that were just staying still, though, they deserved to be pepper sprayed and for a photo op. Gotcha.
Police acted as they felt they needed to at that time in response, and we stand by the.
Why? Why did they need to? They needed to. Why? So he could walk over and hold up a book he's never read in front of a building he wouldn't go to?
Actions.
The country and the world saw this violent clash between people who were otherwise peacefully protesting, but really the president is not sorry for the way things went?
No.
The president is sorry.
He doesn't do sorry. It's a sign of weakness. I mean, imagine him going in a church and asking for forgiveness. You're shitting me, right?
About the fact that Antifa wreaked havoc in our streets and the failure of some members of the media to note that. Like CNN's Chris Cuomo said, show me where it says protesters are supposed to be peaceful. Well, I'd point him to the First Amendment where it says that you have the right to, quote, peaceably assemble. He should go back and read the Constitution. There are many others out there, like Don Lemon, saying that rioting is a mechanism to restructure our country. Burning down St. John's, using a pick to literally like carve out, as we saw in that video, concrete from the sidewalk to hurl at officers.
Right. Yeah, we're not talking about those people.
That's not peacefully protesting.
No. And known and avowed white supremacists and the Boogaloo Boys were doing those kind of things so that you guys would fire tear gas at people who were peaceably assembling. Because you got suckered into fomenting a race war.
The actions of the rioters.
And it still didn't work because, unfortunately for you and your ilk, the majority of Americans on both sides of the aisle are fairly decent human beings.
We're not in keeping with the First Amendment.
I mean, we're all sinners in our own ways. You know, no one's perfect. Except yours truly. Healed.
And I think the media needs to recognize there's a discernment between the peaceful protesters, many of whom I've seen, and the rioters. And yet,
right. And the people who are peacefully protesting, who don't want to be moved because they don't have to be moved for a photo op, and a bunch of people in that group throwing shit is not a reason for tear gassing and pepper spraying and running them out of the park during a peaceable assembly so that he can have a photo op with a book he won't read in front of a church he doesn't go to. Thanks, Critical. I was deployed to the streets to help contain the riots because of the military, and I got to say, we aren't containing this well. Well, I mean, I think some people were deployed to instigate, and it wasn't their fault. Like, somebody tells you to get all gacked up in riot gear and go down there, it might not be, as a law enforcement officer, your first choice on how to deal with this stuff.
America will act against rioters. And yes, under President Trump, he will not allow burning buildings, 150 federal buildings to be defaced, and 750 law enforcement officers to be injured in our country.
Can I ask you one more about the president?
Ryan.
Just
I like
No, apparently
the
not.
blue suit. That's a really snazzy look. Yeah.
Just to follow up on that.
Look at that, just ditching out on it. He was like, what did Brian? What? Bruh.
You do know that the burning of St. John's happened on Sunday nights, and a lot of the violence that you were talking about, that happened on Sunday night. What he was asking about was Monday, when, as anyone who was down there knows, it was almost exclusively peaceful, especially in the moments before the chemical munitions were used on those protesters. So do you just want to clarify that about the burning of St. John's? Because that happened on a different day.
Yeah, the burning of St. John's is what prompted the decision to move the perimeter. It's what prompted Park Police to say that evening, the perimeter must be moved. It's what prompted, it's what prompted AG Barr to agree with that decision on Monday morning that the perimeter needed to be moved. But when you hurl objects at Park Police,
Wait, you can, hold on. There's no perimeter that surrounds St. John's right now. You can go up to the front of the, you can walk on that street.
Don't move.
What's she
after
talking about?
3 orders are given. Park Police acted appropriately when the shield of Park Police was batted down when one person tried to grab a Park Police officer's weapon. That's not peaceful by any definition of the word.
And one question on the area in front of the White House is now officially known as Black Lives Matter Plaza. Does the president agree with that decision?
I haven't talked to him about it.
No, but I mean, I'm gonna ballpark. I'm just gonna say it was a big diaper that day.
That to him. Yes.
Kelly, does he agree in general the way that Mitt Romney stated over the weekend he does with the core message of Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, Mitt Romney can say 3 words outside on Pennsylvania Avenue, but I would note this, that President Trump won 8% of the black vote. Mitt Romney won 2% of the black vote, I believe.
Yeah, let's have that vote again. Let's see if that number flip-flops.
President Trump.
Jesus.
People across the country recognize that while Mitt Romney has a lot of words, notably he said that 47% of the nation is dependent upon government, believes they are victims, believes that the government has a responsibility to care for them. Those were Mitt Romney's words.
Whoa, she's inverting his 47% of Americans don't pay taxes line to something, what, that they're on food stamps? That they're all on the government tit? Is that what it is?
Not too long ago. The president takes great offense to those words. That's
Does he really? Why? Because 47% of people, he doesn't think they're on, 47% of Americans aren't on food stamps because they're not? What are you talking about?
America. Guess what America is? It's when given opportunity via a Trump opportunity zone, belief that Americans of all races.
That's what America is. There was no America before there were Trump opportunity zones. Thank you, OCP.
Rise to the occasion and achieve belief in HBCUs and giving record funding to HBCUs because we need to enable education in our country and school choice. Those kind of actions on the part.
Yeah, I wonder who wrote the bills on funding historically black colleges and universities.
The president stand in stark contrast with the very empty words of Senator Romney. Yes.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Yeah. Excuse me, and he's a Mormon, which, as a Christian, I find effing gross, okay?
As you have noted, the president has talked about the protest, he's talked about the death of George Floyd, but he still hasn't given a formal address to the nation. Why is that, and are there plans for him to do that anytime soon?
Oh, please don't.
So the president has addressed the nation on this. I know several media outlets chose not to cover it, but
what are you talking? He what?
When he was down in Florida last Saturday, he said, and I have the whole thing here, as he said many times, the death of George Floyd on the streets of Minneapolis was a grave tragedy. It should never, ever have happened. He spent several minutes going through this. In fact, half of his speech saying, I understand the pain that people are.
I didn't even talk about the rocket. There was the thing with the rocket, and I was there to talk about the rocket. And I said a bunch of stuff about this.
Feeling we support the right of peaceful protesters. We hear their pleas. And he went on and on and on. He said on Monday, I am your president of law and order and an ally of peaceful protesters. So he has said it. Some in the media have chosen not to cover it. Those words.
You're not talking about that. They asked you about race in America and the idea that he's going to give a speech on race in America. Girlfriend, okay. Jesus, she and I have almost the exact same lips. It's frightening.
They're out there and they're documented. Yes.
I just need better gloss. I have some gloss. Don't I have some? Thought I had some. Do I have any? I don't. It's gone now. Where's my? It's just eyeliner. There's nothing in that drawer. I have got to get some. No. I'll have to wait till next. I gotta have a whole makeup tray in here. Oh, wait, no, I take it back. Wait 1 second. Hi. Is that better? I was a little dry. I look like Brett Michaels.
Ebony, thank you. Obviously, we're hearing a very optimistic message from the president about the jobs numbers and the stock market recovery. But in a
But how does he feel about Wallabies? Has he cracked the tubes yet? This is the water, the emblem of our land. You can put it in a bottle, you can hold it in your hand. Amen. Padre?
executive order on Thursday night, the president said that he had determined that without intervention, the U.S.
In defense of my nose being cuter, it is original. So
the likelihood of a long economic recovery with persistent high unemployment. I'm just wondering why we're hearing two messages from the president and how the American people are supposed to feel about the economy for the rest of the year.
They're supposed to be excited about Trump opportunity zones. Did you not see Larry Kudlow's magic used car salesman address to the nation from right outside when they ran him out on the stairs and said, Larry, say something?
No, the president sees Friday as a great stride toward what he ultimately wants, which is this rearing economy that we had.
Rearing? Yeah, well, I mean, it's taking it up the rear, or?
Where paychecks were growing and at the fastest for low-income workers. We were at a very good place before he chose to stop the economy to save 2.1 million lives potentially. So he took the action that was necessary at the time. He wants to get us back to that place we were at. He's the one who can do it. He's noted there's going to be a time of recovery.
We call it the transition to green.
Thinks that Q4 will be good, next year will be great. Monday was a
Just take his word for it. So if it sucks right up till election day, or there's fits and starts, it's not his fault, and you just got to vote for him and keep your fingers crossed. Because if you're lucky, next year will be just like this year, only twice as much.
great. An unexpected note that the market believes in this president, that employers believe in this president, that they believe they can open their
That foreign investors believe in this president if they buy him out.
doors in the Trump economy. So it was a note of a great first step of progress, but rest assured there are many more steps that we have to take to get back to the
What are some of them?
hottest economy in modern history, but we will get there under President Trump. Yes.
Sure thing. Sticking with the economy, New York City began reopening its economy.
The fun just left this, by the way. It's no longer fun for her right now.
Today, after a very long lockdown, does President Trump think we need another coronavirus stimulus package? And if so, what would he want to see in it before he signs it?
Yeah, he's remained open to a phase 4. There was some discussion about this. There was a meeting last week at the White House about that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So won't get ahead of him, but he has said there are several things he wants. Payroll tax holiday was one of them because that directly advantages low-income workers.
Well, not so much low-income workers as advantages large corporations and multinationals.
Several other things that he would like to see in the package. Won't get ahead of him, but he's certainly still open to a phase 4. But it can't be, as he's noted, just state and local bailouts for blue states that have run their states into the ground because
all their tax dollars, when they go to the federal government, go to red states that don't pull their weight, like Kentucky and Tennessee and Idaho and Iowa and
decades of Democrat policies.
Oh yeah? Really? There's another lie. Look at that look on her face. That's an uncomfortable look for Jesus. I notice her cross is hidden today. Does she hide it when she knows the lies are going to be really egregious? She's like, oh, gonna have to tuck the cross today. Jesus, I don't want you to see this.
Chanel. Thank you, Kaylee. Would President Trump support an actual increase in police funding to help offset some of the damage that could be waged on departments that are defunded across the country?
She looks like a werewolf. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, so again, that would be getting ahead of the president on that exact proposal, but he's been very clear he does not support defunding the police in any way, shape, or form. He noted, in fact...
and he actually has no control over state budgets or city budgets or county budgets at all.
Just a little bit ago.
But I would love for Trump to make the case to Republicans why the federal government should have oversight of state, city, and county budgets. Make that case. Take that down to the Senate floor. Old-fashioned, stand there on the floor and go, my Republican colleagues need to know that this is the time has come for us to change our ways on this.
That we have seen violent crime come down in this country, and why...
Oh, have we? What kind of... How has violent crime gone down in the last little bit? Besides the spike of it during this presidency? Besides it being higher than 2014 consistently? How does it compare to the lowering of the violent crime rate during the Clinton years? How's that work out? What point does that... Do we need to go there? All right.
Time when violent crime's coming down, why would we defund the police, who are in large part responsible for helping America to get to a place where our streets are safe?
We'll be there. Obviously, Albert in the chat, you didn't see the beginning of the show, so go flate yourself.
So I would point you to that and before getting ahead of the president on a specific policy.
Yeah, can I ask a follow-up to that?
Louis.
Yeah,
that's a no.
I wanted to ask you about defunding the police movement, what's going on. How does it impact the crime scenario here?
You said, sorry, I didn't hear the last
The
phrase.
defunding the police, how does it impact the crime scenario here? The crime rates are going up. Do you think that will impact the crime?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, our police officers are the ones who are defending this country and making sure that we have law and order in our streets, and there's no more evidence of that than just taking a look at the raw numbers. Our police are described as the blue line in American society between peace and chaos, between order and anarchy, and that thin blue line has done quite a bit. Just looking at 2018 numbers, murder arrests 11,970, robbery arrests 88,130, aggravated assault 395,800, violent crime arrests 495,900. That's police officers who are doing the...
Yeah, it's great. Talk about conviction rates. And secondly, understand that you don't get extra points for right now. Again, how many times do I have to show you this chart?
Arresting. You eliminate police officers, you will have chaos, crime, and anarchy in the streets, and that's something that's unacceptable to the president.
And by the way, one of the things that people don't talk about in relation to what she's talking about that's related to George Floyd and sort of the situation that led up to him being murdered was that for whatever reason in 2018 during the Trump administration, you know, he like only whatever happens in America during Trump is all Trump, right? That's what we've agreed on that. We know that. This is an article from the Star Tribune. As crime rises in Minneapolis, observers wonder whether it's part of a larger trend. Trend or aberration. Increase follows 30-year low in many crime categories in 2018. So, like I said, as violent crime was going down in the rest of the country, in Minneapolis, it's been on the rise. Reported crime has edged up in Minneapolis so far this year, leaving city officials, and this has continued, by the way, since last year. It really hasn't abated in any major way. Leaving city officials, police, and community leaders to wonder whether the increase is an aberration or a sign of major crime trend in the state's largest city. The nearly 13% jump in violent crime mirrors a similar trend across the river in St. Paul, where law enforcement officials are scrambling to quell a recent spate of violence. In Minneapolis, police data showed that the city's 37 homicides climbed 32% from 28 this time last year, while aggravated assaults, rapes, and robberies also rose during the first 10 months of the year, contributing to the increase in reports of violent crime, according to newly released police department statistics. The data show that property crime reports were up nearly 15% during the same time period. This comes on the heels of a sharp decline the year before, when the city had logged a 30-year low in many crime categories, according to Deputy Police Chief Eric Fors. When you have significant crime reductions, those are difficult numbers to compare yourself against, said Fors, who runs the department's investigative bureau, while stressing that no one factor can explain the sudden jump. If there's anything we've learned over time, is that we don't get anywhere without our partnerships. We're just one leg of the chair. We can't do it alone, and the community can't do it alone, and the courts can't do it alone. For the year to date, violent crime is down 3%. This was beginning of 28%. Compared to previous 5-year average, police statistics show the number of shooting victims is up roughly 9% to 234, still down from the previous 5-year average of 241. That wasn't, I mean, it's early in the year when they did this. When was this? Yeah, so this is in November. So they're using statistics from the first 2 quarters. So they're already at that point. About half the shootings happened in Minneapolis's 4th precinct. The increase has emerged as a significant issue in the debate over police resources, which reached a boiling point this fall with the release of, and it's so gross, sore knees. What is this gross video? Like, what are they trying to show me? Why twice? These ads are hideous. Go away. Ugh. Nice day. What's wrong with you? Okay, an avocado with an egg in it. That sounds like a good idea. How to stay sharp after 60. Cook your eggs in an avocado, clearly. Major Jacob Fry, who was asked for 14 new officers, said the rising violence underscored the need for a different approach to addressing crime and its causes, pointing to recent bail reform efforts, increasing resources for economic inclusion, and further investment in affordable housing, seen as a major hurdle for former offenders trying to reintegrate into society. This is all from 2 years ago, leading up to 2018. At the same time, He said the shortage of officers was likely a contributing factor, calling it unacceptable that thousands of high-priority 9/11 calls couldn't be immediately assigned because of a lack of available police squads. There's no quicker way to erode trust in a police department than to call 911 and not have somebody show up. Others question the conventional assumption that more cops equal less crime. They argue that police have relatively little impact on crime rates while creating friction with minority communities. We see the gun violence, the domestic violence, the racism, the addictions and overdoses, the lack of affordable housing, said Yolanda Hare of Black Visions Collective, one of the community groups arguing against additional police funding. 50 years of trying to solve these problems with more and more police have not solved the problem. It's just landed more black and brown people behind bars. Again, on Thursday, proponents on both sides of the issue crowded city council chambers for meeting on Fry's 2020 budget that featured hours of dueling testimony. The increase of 2019 comes a year after which they saw the crime dip. There you go. So the lead up to what was going on in Minneapolis had a backstory that was different than parts of the country. For whatever reason, Minneapolis had seen a spike in violent crime over the last 2 years.
Do you think this is political in nature? The
Sorry?
entire movement is political in nature? Is politically motivated, this movement?
Is the entire thing politically motivated in nature? I can understand him. He's got an Indian accent. What's wrong with you, lady?
What the president believes is, look, when you look at, I would just take at their own words, Black Lives Matter DC, and Black Lives Matter DC said Black Lives Matter means defund the police. So if that's what the movement means, of course the president stands against defunding the police. All Black Lives Matter, including the life of David Dorn, who perished in the last week and a half, including Patrick Underwood, who also lost his life this week. All Black Lives Matter, but in terms of the movement Black Lives Matter, they define themselves as defund the police, and that's something this president stands against. Frank.
Yes. Blacks are disproportionately arrested and disproportionately incarcerated in this country, and when they return to society, they are often denied the right to vote, sometimes for the rest of their lives. Is the president concerned about this disparity, and does the president favor restoring the rights of all those who complete their sentences so that they can participate in the 2020 election?
So I haven't spoken to him on that issue specifically, but what I would note is your question does edge on the notion of criminal justice reform. Obviously, someone who's wrongfully incarcerated, that we need to address that situation. And the president has, with the First Step Act, a great piece of legislation that...
Yeah, that's not the problem. This is well after people have interacted with the police. And when you're talking about incarceration rates, you're talking about conviction rates, not about people who are picked up for doing stuff. And if you're saying that there are laws that need to be changed because people who are picked up for things that shouldn't be illegal, like minor pot possession and those kind of things, and that whole process is ridiculous, that you're getting pulled over and illegally searched by people looking for a crime, then that's the part you need to fix more than almost any other part, because that's the part that leads to people who don't need to go to jail going to jail. Somebody who's been convicted of rape or violent assault or robbery or murder is not who we're talking about with criminal justice reform.
Says pregnant women can't be shackled when they're having their baby in jail. These are basic, common sense, human decency reforms that the president put in place. The sentencing disparities that are at play because of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, that crime bill, which has been derided, and rightfully so, by civil...
By the entire Congressional Black Caucus who was for it, and the majority of, like all of the black mayors
rights leaders. This president
at the time
helped in part to rectify that. And I'd note that the First Step Act, the beneficiaries, more than 90% have been Black Americans. So this is a president who's always stood on the side of justice, but I have not spoken.
Right, of justice. That's why what the people in the FBI are what, scum for looking at his
to him about that specifically. Is there anyone who I haven't gotten to?
Could you ask him about that?
Emily.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question on behalf of myself and then one from a colleague who couldn't be here.
Sure.
So many complaints were made against Derek Chauvin prior to the death of George Floyd, and I was wondering if President Trump believes that disciplinary records and complaints against police, as well as police personnel files, should be accessible to the public. States have differing laws on this, but should there be a minimum national standard on police transparency?
Sure, so that any genuine criminal who is a child molester or a rapist or a killer or a drug dealer can file a fake assault charge for the cop and then basically have that cop a target from this point. Is that the? Do you not see the reach of this? You know? All right.
With respect to these complaints and records?
Yes, it's a good question, but again, it would get to what the president's going to propose going forward, so I won't address that or get ahead of that. But
because he doesn't know and she doesn't know and they don't know.
The particular incidents you reference of George Floyd, it was egregious, and that needs to be looked at and is being looked at, not just at the state level, but at the level of the DOJ as well.
Thank you. And from a colleague, does President Trump urge Prince Andrew to comply with his Department of Justice's request for an interview in the case against Jeffrey Epstein?
I haven't spoken to him about that, so
I don't. My pastor won't allow it.
Would not get ahead of him.
I don't talk Epstein with him because he starts getting this glow in his eyes, and he keeps telling me to stand up and turn around.
Not John.
Caleb, a couple of questions on coronavirus.
Look at that freeze, though. Don't you ask me a Prince Andrew Epstein. Look at that. Look at that. Like, oh, you don't even. Oh.
Is there any thought being given to returning to, if not a daily coronavirus briefing, frequent coronavirus briefings? And
yes, please.
The reopenings, the president said some weeks back that he would continue to monitor the situation, and that if any states were doing things that he didn't think were appropriate, he would step in to intervene. Has the president, in any of these reopenings, particularly as coronavirus cases are increasing, which could be due in part due to increased testing, is he seeing anything that gives him concern?
It's the case. The president has noted that the more testing you do, the more cases you get. That the test, we believe officially, and we've talked to Dr. Fauci from his soundproof room, that we're going to have a deep fake of him soon where he says what a lot of people believe, which is that there are
so I would
that basically tests cause the disease. That's what we're settling on.
With this first,
First of all, science is evil. Jesus heals. Good night.
Sent me some new information before coming out here that new cases have stabilized, and many of the new cases are being identified through proactive monitoring and finding asymptomatic cases.
No, they're not.
Today, we saw the lowest new mortality report since the end of March, less than
the lowest new mortality, yes, because of New York going down and the red states going up, and high populated areas that have been working on it going down, and lesser populated areas going up.
500, and testing continues to expand with over
Mean Girl screaming 5, 4.
20 million done, and more than 6% of Americans being tested, and in 7 states, nearly 10% of the population. So we are heading in a positive direction, even as we begin to safely reopen.
But again, has the president seen anything that causes him concern?
I would know.
No, he doesn't care. We got to get it open. We got it. Fake news. Got to get it open.
But again, the encouraging signs put forward by Dr. Birx. He's seen the country safely.
By Dr. Birx. Notice she's the one who was allowed to keep coming out.
Open. And I would also just note some of.
Yes. Bring out your newly dead punk. I've got the Robinson. I got to go to Robinsons. They've lost 4 today.
The media contradictions here. Certainly not referring to you specifically, John, but just.
Because you're at Fox News.
A little more broadly, that there isn't an outcry about social distancing among the protests. And I mean, I saw one.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of people worrying about that.
Network with footage of the Ozarks and complaining about social distancing in the Ozarks.
Yeah, because those people are just having recreation in this. You don't seem to give a shit about making sure that all the cops had masks.
And then seamlessly transitioning.
You wanted them to, you had those cops that you had them remove their badges and their name plates and their name tags and their insignias. You did that, but you didn't have masks for them. They weren't socially distanced. Why don't you give a shit about cops, Kaylee?
Test footage and not suggesting that there was a problem with the lack of social distancing. So I think we have to be very consistent here.
So what? If That's the issue. That's a big part of this too. We don't have to be consistent. Nobody has to be consistent. I can't be consistent about the other side. Okay, I can't be consistent about yelling at your people if they're not going to listen. The people who aren't wearing masks at the protests are not the people that I'm supporting, and we talk about everybody who wears masks. And a bunch of the people who wear masks are the people that you consider a problem. The Antifa crowd and the Boogaloo Boys and all those crowd. Yeah.
And one note that
Thanks,
I
Chris.
really wanted to get in, should have weaved it in
No
earlier, but I
problem.
think it's important, is just there's so much focus on our police officers right now. There are absolute cases of injustices. Our heart breaks for those cases, but I just want to note.
When you say that, do you mean the people acted upon by the police or the fact that the police are being blistered for that? Because stop doing this both sides language.
Some of the great things our police have done last year alone. In Alaska,
good,
retired
Paul.
cop
Thank
Kim
you.
Castro jumped in freezing water to help victims to safety after a plane crash. In Idaho, a woman said, "He saved my son's life," commenting on a cop who saved her disabled son. In Maine, a detective was killed while helping a motorist. In Rhode Island, a baby who was choking was saved by an officer. In Maryland, an officer was hailed for intervening in an active shooting incident. North Carolina, police thwarted a mass shooting. In Ohio, police took down a mass shooter at a bar. In Wisconsin, a terminally ill girl was visited by 40 officers and canines. In New York, officers Buys and Officer
And they didn't bite her.
Roman of the NYPD responded to an incident involving a homeless man. They bought him new glasses, a haircut, and a new suit, and they helped him to find a job. In Detroit, Michigan, an officer...
Yeah, we know these things. That definitely has to be part of the strategy that cops have going forward, and people need to start giving a shit to the stories of cop heroism as well. That's not what we're talking about, though. These guys aren't going to chokehold anybody.
helped a homeless man struggling to shave in the streets. In Virginia...
This is super weird. Did you just have a razor? Or did you take his razor? What is he... I mean, I appreciate that they're helping him shave, but...
Officers could be seen playing with little girls, playing dolls with them on the street. And in Arizona, Charlie called 911 asking for a Happy Meal mistakenly, and police delivered. This is who our great law enforcement officers are, and we should remember that. Thank you.
That's adorable. Thank you
much.
and goodbye. I'm going to leave on a Happy Meal. Jesus.
Hello.
Hi, yeah, no. All right. So thanks, guys, for hanging out with me, by the way. I'll be back tomorrow, regular time. And I'll be probably gaming late tonight. I'm just saying, throwing that out there. Just, you know, on Twitch. If you're a Twitch-like person, you want to come over there and visit. We just kind of, I just game and we chat while it's happening. It's kind of a nice time. It kind of distracts the crazy parts of my brain a little bit so that we can just have philosophical discussions. It's a good time. Or we just talk about movies and stuff. But either way, I'll be back tomorrow at 3. I'm going to go fix dinner for the family right now. I have some, I went to the grocery earlier, and that was an adventure in and of itself. We'll talk about that as much as I possibly can in the future. These venturing out into public moments that are getting more and more frequent are very curious, emotional feats, both for the members of the family and the kids, and they're all they've yes, it's true. We do need more patrons. Thanks for bringing that up, Richard Custer. Patreon.com/Hal Sparks is the site. If you want to become a patron, it would greatly help us. We're looking for 500. We've got, I think, 265 now. Is that the number? I should always check it right before, but it just seems weird to do so. And you can super chat for the support. Thanks to Chris Giordani. Thank you for the super chat. And Jess Dollface for the bits on Twitch. And Dean Snorkler, thanks for the follow. Critical, thanks so much today, and I'm glad. I hope you enjoy whatever you chose to purchase to wear in the merch, which is available down below, and also at the Streamlabs store. Thank you, Jill Carter and Linus Bliss. Thanks for being a new follower. That's lovely. NCIS, Dr. Hutu, always great to see you here. I agree. We should play Call of Duty, and we will. My name on Xbox is Hal5Park5, all run together. So I will see you guys tomorrow at 3 o'clock, our regular time, and I'm sure we will have, God knows, so much awful to talk about. But in the meantime, I would suggest to you, as Can't Stop Lying, the intrepid CSL in our chat room always says, reach out to somebody who's, you know, on the edge of all this stuff, and you're reach out to an old acquaintance, check in on them, see how they're doing, because a lot of people are struggling with this. Bob Kulick, who is the guitar player for that played with Paul Stanley on his solo record, did a lot of replacement solos for Kiss. I believe, I mean, everybody's edging around this conversation, but I believe he took his life. They haven't had an official statement, but I believe that's the case. And I think a lot of it had to do with just kind of the loneliness that he normally felt in life getting stacked upon this other stuff. So reach out to somebody that you don't normally talk to that's, you know, been going through a lot in this. And I would even say, if you're spend as much time supporting the good as you do calling out the bad. It is incredibly lazy to just follow the dopamine response of crapping on someone and getting righteously angry and stuff on Twitter and Facebook and all these kind of things. We come here, we joke around this stuff. We definitely talk about serious issues. I definitely call them out for their lies and their BS or whatever, but I don't let them take control of my emotional state. And one of the ways you can maintain and not get overwhelmed and exhausted and feel like you're in pain because of all this stuff, one of the reasons why, you know, how you can deal with that is to foment the positive, not just the negative. Reach out and go, this person's awesome. I just like to take a moment and remind everybody how great this person is. This is my favorite song. This is my favorite artist. This is a great, you know, politician, a great sports person, a great friend of yours that has a company. You find a product you like that you're not, you know, do an unpaid ad like I do every so often, just letting people know that you like something and the company's decent and all this kind of stuff. Remind people of stuff that you like and that's good and that's positive and supportive of those kind of folks. If there's a movie you want people to see because it's related to what's going on and you feel like it might help their heart blossom in a very dark moment, do that. It's that little extra work. It's okay to see these videos and be angered by them and step on them with a big wet foot on social media. But you have to be willing to do the extra work of being positive towards someone. You don't get the same dopamine rush. You won't. It's like as an actor, I've always said, you know, people are always impressed with the Oscar for like the most crying somebody does in a movie or or an Emmy for a television show. And having done a bunch of that, I'm here to tell you, and I will call out any actor that says otherwise, that joy, that bliss, that happiness, those are harder emotions to act on screen than sadness and anger and sorrow. Everybody gets all these kudos for being angry and sad on camera. I can cry on command if I choose to. You guys have seen me fight it back just having small conversations. I can dial it up to any degree as an actor because it's called for in the scene. It's not a problem. But for a lot of people, showing and growing happiness in themselves is very difficult. And it takes practice and effort. So I'm saying to you now, do that. Take time to, if you're gonna call out something awful on social media and go, wow, that showed up in my feed and that was awful, I'm gonna say my piece about it. But as a check on myself immediately, I'm gonna go say something positive, not to counter what I wrote or whatever, but to point where we want to go. It's not enough to slam the brakes all the time. You got to be able to navigate to the light. So there you go. Just that little piece, if you would, for me, that little extra effort. If you see some bad cops doing some bad stuff, find some good cops who've done some good stuff and point them out, because that, instead of forming a wall around all cops like they feel like they have to do, because if one is considered bad, they're all considered bad, like that ACAB horse shit, you go, no, there's a difference. And we celebrate the difference. And the ones who want to drag it down or use that authority for ill don't count. They're not part of that. And I will not allow them to be taken that way. There you go. So you guys are wonderful. I adore you. Glad to, why do I have to go? Because I got to go cook dinner for the family. That's why. It's dinner time. So cheers, Marco. I see you. We'll see you again next time. I'm here every day at 3 o'clock. So come back and join me tomorrow, 3 p.m. my time, of course, Pacific. If you're elsewhere in the world, spread the love. Tell people about the show. Tell them I'm here. I mean, I know my stuff is too long form for most people. Most people don't want to stick around like you tough ones for a couple hours and enjoy this kind of a programming, you know. They like the small doses. We're not for the short attention span crowd. I understand that. But if you think of anything, pass it along. Pass it along. It helps us out. Trying to grow, you know, it's very important. So take care of yourself, take care of somebody else, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. I gotta go cook some food. I gotta do it. I gotta go cook some food for everybody. Dinner time.
Thank you, Doc. You ever serve time?
I love lamb.
I never realized how much my advice hurt people until my advice hurt me.
Moon River. Once it was reluctantly aroused. It was hard to get it aroused, and it is hard to get it aroused, but we got it aroused.
Tell him, McCluskey. Tell him what time it is.
Every minute you don't tell us why you're here, I cut off a finger.
Mine or yours?
Yours.
Damn. I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
That was really cool, by the way. That was really cool, by the way.
We're honored to have with us today our amazing Vice President, Mike Pence, and his wonderful wife, Karen.
That's great psychology. Why don't you just say something bad about my mother?
Am I getting through to you? Alpha!
I couldn't think of a more horrible job if I wanted to. And you have to do it.
How, in the name of Zeus's butthole, did you get out of your cell?
You stay classy, San Diego.
I love lamb.
Man's got to know his limitations. All right. Who wants some? Who's next?
And you know, when you say per capita, there's many per capitas. It's like per capita relative to what?
Did you hear that? Yeah. It's a dickper.
What's a dickper?
To pee with.
How?
I got news for you, pal. You ain't leading but two things right now. Jack and shit. Jack left town. Lady, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to ask you to leave the store.
The sportos, motorheads, geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, dweebies, dickheads, they all adore him. They think he's a righteous dude.